has anything they wish to talk about that's not a part of the agenda?
If I had anyone.
Okay. In that case, we'll move on to the approval of the agenda. I understand we have one thing that's been postponed.
There, item number 6, the final plat for Easton Park has been, the staff would recommend to remove that from the agenda. They're not ready yet in the field for that one.
Okay.
And
Do you have a
then
motion?
also, if you want to consider the election of officers, since this is the annual meeting, that's up to the commission to add that as an agenda item.
How do you all feel about that, since there's
I feel,
5 of us here? Do we need to wait, or?
I think we need to wait till there's more members here.
Yeah.
Even though it may be perfunctory or whatever, and who knows, we got an election here
That won't
too.
put us in hiatus for any reason, will it, going to August?
I don't think so.
Shouldn't cause
I mean,
any
it
issues.
says in
I
the
mean-
bylaws that the annual meeting's in July, because that's the start of the fiscal year.
And the big thing is probably what Ed does in signing plats. I just don't want all of a sudden we throw some rod in the spokes
Sure.
unintentionally.
Yeah, not to my knowledge.
Okay. I think we ought to wait till August as well then.
Okay. Okay, then, do I have a motion
I move for
to,
approval of the agenda with the deletion of item 6 and the deferral of the election of officers to the August meeting.
Betty seconded, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
I didn't hear the motion.
Oh,
Ed St. Clair.
Yeah,
did.
Ed, St. Clair got it.
it did the motion.
What do you say?
Oh, that we're going to, that we're going to, number 6 is not ready,
Oh, okay.
We deferred the
Okay.
election to August.
You
and then
changed it.
deferred the election to August, right?
I'm sorry, I just didn't hear what you said.
Okay, item number 3, approval of the minutes of the June 21st, 2018. Do we have any changes or with that?
Move for approval?
All those, second? Betty, second. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Reflect that I abstain, please.
Okay.
So item number 4 is approval of a youth representative for the planning commission. Do we do this as a motion?
Yes. Yep.
Do I have a motion? Do I have a motion, and a motion? No,
We got to, I'll make a motion that we vote for Hannah Lee to be the planning commission youth representative.
second.
Come on.
Does this die for lack of a second at this point?
Yeah, I guess. Nobody seconds
Okay.
it.
I nominate Nick Lamondre.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Hold on one second.
Okay, well, a little bit louder into the microphone, please. And one opposed.
Especially since I didn't hear the name.
Lamondre. So he recommended Nick Lamondre.
What, I'm sorry.
I didn't hear what the name was.
Oh, Nick Lamondre.
Okay.
All those in favor, again, we'll go one more time with this. Nick Lamondre?
Aye.
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 Okay.
I approve.
Approve, Ed?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's wrong, but that's.
I'll approve. Okay.
Item number 5, discussion and public hearing on a request to rezone parcel 84, 84.01, and 87, tax map 130 at the eastern intersection of North Campbell Station Road and Fritz Road, 10.23 acres from R-1 to R-1, OSR Fred Long Construction applicant.
This item was actually discussed as a workshop last month. It's at the eastern intersection of Fritz Road, North Campbell Station. It involves currently 3 parcels that total to a little over 10 acres. It's currently zoned R1. They're requesting open space residential. The property is a good fit for the open space residential. It has some, on the larger tract, has some heavy, steep terrain. There's a small depression along the west portion of the property, and then there's some wooded areas on the south portion of the property as well. And the OSR would allow you to work better with that. This district would also be consistent with the future land use map that calls for very low density residential. The staff would recommend approval of this rezoning subject to the 3 parcels being consolidated into one parcel with a plat prior to second reading at the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. Because in the OSR you have to have at least 5 acres to rezone. So unless they were combined, those 2 smaller lots would be non-compliant with that. So with that stipulation, the staff recommends approval of Resolution PC-18-13.
And we can do that just by putting it in at one of the subject twos, that it has to be done before.
Yeah,
Okay.
you can.
This,
Does anybody have any questions or comments with this?
I think it's an appropriate zoning for it. Makes sense.
yeah, I agree.
Okay. Motion and including the
Consolidation of the parcels.
consolidation.
Okay.
Do I have a
Somebody make
motion?
I haven't
I'll
heard
make a
one.
motion that the 3 parcels be consolidated into one
And zone to OSR, Ed?
and zone, yeah.
Okay.
One, R1 OSR.
Okay. I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Oppose?
Number 6.
Item number 7, discussion and public hearing on concept plan for the Ivy Farms, parcel 52, 54.01, 57, tax map 151, 114.32 acres, 213 lots, zoned R-1 OSR, site incorporated applicant.
This property on Union Road, north side of Union Road between Saddle Ridge and Fox Run, it was recently rezoned to OSR. Previously, it had been mostly agricultural. As required in the OSR district, the concept plan has to be submitted to show how the full build-out of the subdivision would occur. The applicant's design team and the staff's view has done a really good job with the layout, and they've incorporated both vehicular and pedestrian connectivity within and also externally to the development, which is required in our subdivision regulations and in our comprehensive land use plan is highly recommended. They also have included a very substantial walking trail system throughout the development that again would tie into trail sections both in Saddle Ridge and Fox Run. They have a large bioswale and a pretty robust tree planting plan as part of their streetscape plan. They have designed very well with the land and tried to avoid the drainages that bisect through the property and the wooded areas, steeper slopes. There's a lot of open space, particularly in the northern portion of the property. It has more environmental constraints. So they have almost 50 acres of open space in this concept plan. So the staff would recommend approval of the concept plan subject to the remaining comments being addressed, comments 1 through 5, which is a very small number of comments considering the size of this tract and
from what
the
you've had,
project,
what you
yeah.
had earlier too.
So again, we would commend the design team on a job well done in our opinion.
You say almost 50 acres in open space?
Is the applicant here?
I'm here, Robin Ackman. Well, this is David Robinette, the civil engineer from site. I'm Robin Askew. I'm the attorney for the applicant. I know nothing about swales or retention or any of that, so that's what we'll let David address if you have those issues. I'm just here to respond to any of the issues that come up with respect to the regulations.
David?
Robinette, 228 Oren Road. Sorry I'm late.
You didn't expect
On
us to
time
move this
anyway.
fast, huh?
We read all the conditions. We're good with everything. Obviously, on the 117-acre site, there's a lot of things that's going to be worked out during preliminary plat stage, so we're good with
what we have
anything.
here.
Yeah, we're really good.
Okay.
Any other opportunities for pedestrian connections over to Saddle Ridge?
There's one, you see the one at the top of that screen, top left of that screen right there.
Is that Saddle Ridge or is that Fox Run up there?
Well, that's Fox Run. There is
Kind of right.
no sidewalk
Okay, there's
in
just,
Saddle Ridge.
that predates a lot of our pedestrian future connections.
There's one opportunity, Mark, I don't know if you can see it or not, but there's a cul-de-sac that dead ends almost at the property just north of
That's
Paco.
somewhere right in there,
Right.
isn't it,
Uh,
David?
If you drive out there, those folks must have a good time at the end of that cul-de-sac.
Yeah,
There's fire
it
pit
just
and
doesn't
there's
show
all
up
kinds of
well.
things there, so
See it?
it could connect there. I don't know that the right-of-way
right in
actually
there.
goes all the way to the property line. It looks like it's short of the property line, but there is a cul-de-sac that's within 15 feet of the property line right there.
Which I'd like to, it'd be nice if we could get, you guys have done a great job with a lot of circulation, pedestrian circulation. And I applaud you for that. It'd be nice if there was just a little more connectivity, but it may not be possible with an older subdivision. We just didn't allocate connections, future connections like we do today. But if we could, I think we've got a couple over to Fox Run, one down by probably where the Fox Run clubhouse is.
Right.
Is my best guess. And then you've got one up at the top of the hill, probably close to that water tower, I'd say, somewhere.
And we're going to connect through our clubhouse out at the front
Yeah.
to the 10-foot trail that's going to be built along Union Road.
Mm-hmm.
And then when the Swan Farm, when we do that plan, there'll be one down the
The new road.
Well, there'll be a sidewalk down the new road, but we're also planning on putting a pedestrian path down the creek
Floodplain. Yeah.
through the
Oh, right. Yeah.
down to Kingston Pike,
Okay.
Kingston Pike. So
Okay. Probably. Were you thinking east side or west side?
east side.
Okay.
That's where the sewer easement is, and it's kind of flat. I mean,
Yeah.
they've already kind of flattened it off through there. So
Your subgrades may be a little challenging in there. You may get into some unsuitables, but
Right.
it is it's only a walking path. So. Well, this is great. I mean, I think we've made a lot of progress. Is Road B, that long cul-de-sac, is that going to require a variance?
yes,
Okay. Okay, we've just discussed that. We've
Yeah.
done that before. It's, different situations. It's very
that is
appropriate.
purely from topography because
Yeah.
there's a lot of topography between.
I'm looking at the
lower
contours.
side, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, road A and B would, yeah.
That's greater than, 1,200 feet or 1,000 feet, whatever the ordinance says.
Less than that. Didn't we have
500.
600 feet, 500 or 600 feet?
500, I believe. Yeah, they would need it.
Yeah, I see definitely Road B.
The upper and the lower one are both, well, I guess it's all ultimately one.
Well, you got Road D
Yeah,
connected.
they-
You probably won't need one on Road A, but you might. It's not a big deal. We've done it. I mean, it's
We
done in the
we
past.
talked with the designer about that, looping it, but because of the drainage through there and
Yeah.
trying to not disturb that was the reason.
Well, you've got that
behind
pond. You've got some topography that it
Yeah.
doesn't make a whole lot of sense to battle that topography up there by that
Yeah.
pond to try to connect those. I mean, I think they've done a good job of putting this plan together. It'd be nice if we could figure out maybe another pedestrian connection on basically the west, southwest side of this up to Saddle Ridge. If we could figure, it just may not be possible.
There's a detention pond on the left-hand side of that sheet where Saddle Ridge is. You see that where it says open space right there? That's actually a detention pond that we might grade-wise be able to get
area.
something.
Okay.
And if that's,
Yeah,
you
but
know,
those
obviously
those
that's-
contours are fairly tight in there too. But maybe you could work across
Right.
the slope. But I mean, that's going to require a.
I mean, I'm sure
that's gonna
owned by the
require-
I'm sure that's owned
Right.
by the homeowners association.
Oh,
over
yeah.
there, so.
And you may or may not get cooperation. I don't know. But it seems like that would behoove everybody. Because I mean, it'd be a nice walk. I mean, having all those paths that go through your open space for folks that, you know, jog or walk or whatever, it seems like everybody would really enjoy that.
Be really an additional amenity for Saddle Ridge with no cost.
Yeah, the one in the upper left would connect to Fox Run, but it's also connected.
That's the
Goes
segment
down
that
to
connects
Saddle
between
Ridge.
Right,
Saddle
that's that
Ridge
one that connects both.
Yeah.
That's up there by the
So
water
that
tower,
kind
I
of-
think.
down
gets
the
you
gas line
connected.
easement or TVA.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
a TVA transmission easement where the
Yeah.
one they changed the poles on a couple of years ago.
So that gets you through to Saddle Ridge in that way, but it gets you to
I mean,
the
that helps.
street.
That, and
Yeah.
like I said, there just may not be another obvious location to connect.
You would need to take action on that variance for the cul-de-sac, and
Would we need to take action at the concept plan level or just at the
Normally, we've
preliminary
been
plat
doing
level?
that at the concept plan level.
Okay, that's kind
Yeah.
of what I remember.
It could be done at either phase.
Well,
but
the applicant needs to know because he doesn't want to go through all this and do
Right.
all the engineering
that was
and then all of a sudden realize that he can't get that
Yeah, that's a lot
that
expensive
that
to find
variance.
out you can't
So
get
this
that
is why we do the concept plans so you would know what our expectations are.
Anybody else have any questions or comments? You have anybody, Mark?
I haven't had anyone.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
Okay, do we have to make a motion on the variance?
No, not,
No,
that's not.
just-
Yeah, you need to take separate action if you want to do
Separate
that.
action, But do
with-
it tonight, yeah.
Yeah, we probably
do it
should
tonight.
to be consistent with what we've done in the past. We probably
Okay.
need to address that.
that first, and
Okay,
then on the plan itself.
so-
Yeah.
Concept plan last time.
So, motion, are you going to do a
Okay,
motion?
so the motion is to be on that.
On the variance.
The what?
The variance.
The variance.
Variance from the cul-de-sac
I move
length.
that, whatever this road is, it is,
B as in boy.
B. B, a variance be, given for that road.
For the length of a cul-de-sac.
Length of cul-de-sac. Yeah.
Normally, we tie in a hardship with that topography, environmentally sensitive areas, et cetera. But we try to tie in something with that motion.
Verbs.
I'm sorry, sorry, Betty. I'm taking your motion away from you, aren't I?
It's topographic considerations there. Yeah,
Have you got what you need, Mark?
I think I do.
Okay.
Yes.
Comfortable with that motion because it's still officially your motion.
It can be yours, that's okay.
No, but I'll second that motion.
Okay, second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose?
Who
Okay.
seconded that? I'm sorry.
I'm
Noah.
sorry.
Okay.
Noah.
Thank you. And now for the concept plan itself.
I move for approval of the concept plan.
Second?
Oh, I thought
Plan.
I'll second.
All those in,
I was thinking you said.
Just the way you said it, it was more of like a anyway.
all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Okay, let's move on.
Get out here early.
I thought we're making pretty good progress tonight. I
Discussion and
thought-
public hearing on a approval of the request from Comcast to install underground conduit along portions of Parkside Drive, North Campbell Station Road, Campbell Lakes Drive, and Lake Edge Drive. Comcast applicant.
Well, I don't know if the applicant is, okay, are you here for Comcast? Well, I told him he probably wouldn't need to be here until about 7:45, so I was wrong. So anyway, I could go over this project briefly. And if you have questions, they probably will be here pretty soon. This basically just involves Comcast installing conduit to eventually put fiber along the town's portion of Parkside Drive, the south side, and then part of Lakes Edge Drive, Campbell Station Road, part of it, and Campbell Lakes Drive. The black line basically is where the requested conduit would be placed, and then within the overhead utility easement along the interstate there, a portion of that. These will be for main lines that we provide for service connections to properties in this area. There's about 10,000 linear feet involved in this project, so it's a pretty big project. We've met with the designers and the applicants 2 or 3 times to make sure that they get the conduit within either existing platted right-of-way or existing utility easements that are normally along property lines or just outside of rights-of-ways. And they've done that with their plan. The remaining subject twos on the plan deal with basically easy things that should be easy to correct. Signing and sealing all the plan sheets, adding a note to the plans that talks about the conduit would not interfere with existing sidewalks or landscaping. My understanding is this would be bored at least 30 inches below the surface at a minimum.
Question is, are they going to have
so
to
it
dig up, but they're putting it
should
under-
all be bored. There are a lot of utilities out there in Parkside Drive that are underground because it's mostly an underground system. So they're going to have to work with that. But you know,
You don't see any problem with getting it in?
they've conveyed that they can do it and keep it within the easements, and that's what they've presented with their plan package. They will still need to obtain a right-of-way permit from the town's engineering staff, and if they need any traffic control measures, they'll need to coordinate that with the town as well, because they may have to be disrupting some of these streets or traffic flows temporarily while they're working on this. So they just need to coordinate that with our engineering staff. And you all are reviewing this because this is an extension of a utility, and that's required to be reviewed by the Planning Commission. So with those subject twos, the staff would recommend approval of this particular request.
Does this fit in with our technology ordinances that we have, or is that a separate thing?
No, it's not a small cell support structure. It's purely just an underground conduit that would service fiber installation in the future. But it's not, it doesn't involve any small cell support structures. There are some structures, some small, relatively small structures that would be above ground, that would be part of this project, some pedestals, some cabinets, you know, that you would find as typical to these type of utility installations like telephone and electric, you know, those type of structures. And that's the kind of structures that we want to make sure that they coordinate the placement of those so that it doesn't interfere with sidewalks or, you know, landscaping or visibility obstructions at intersections and things like that. So,
And you have that in the subject twos, the way to protect that?
that was one of the recommendations, is to add that as a note on the plans, and then we would also, you know, coordinate that in the field. We would have a pre-construction meeting with the contractor, just like we did with the Zayo development when they actually did the small cell support structures, to make sure everybody was on the same page and, you know, had the same set of plans that were approved. And they've already installed the city of Knoxville's conduit, is my understanding, so they're just moving west at this point to finish it out.
Cover the same area as Verizon's does?
I'm not sure. I don't know.
Farragut be able to get Comcast?
I don't know that either. I don't know if they're here or not. We got through the, oh yeah, there's Billy. Okay. Yeah.
Hi, Billy Fulgham, 10330 Hardin Valley Road with Fulgham McIndoe and Associates. I apologize, I didn't hear your question.
I'm sorry, what?
I apologize, I didn't hear your question.
Oh, will Farragut be able to have Comcast?
I don't know.
It's agreements and all sorts of bureaucracy that has to be, hoops have to be jumped through for that, but
I promise, I'm not real sure.
it'd be nice to have a little more competition, wouldn't it? It wouldn't hurt our
Way
feelings.
above. I can talk to you about, you know, the conduits, but not about that.
Billy, while you're up there, the line that goes back along I-40, that next to the walking trail, those utilities that are in that easement now, those are overhead, correct? Because you're right next to the electric back there along that trail, back behind the stores. Or those are also underground.
They put underground up there.
Well, I think the ones next to I-40 might be overhead, and then they're underground when they pop over to Parkside Drive.
They are. Yeah. I think we asked Adam about that, and I don't remember if it seemed like it was something that was related to the existing overhead users didn't want that additional user. I don't know. That's kind of.
Well, that's what I was saying.
not
If you're
vague.
right next to that trail, and obviously with directional bores, the impact is kind of minimal except at your PEDs. And so I'm just thinking that it may be everything in that easement is overhead except what this is, and so you don't have a whole lot of conflicts. But otherwise, it's going to be real tight to get it in right there. But it seems like that you guys have already talked about this at a staff developer, and you
Well,
think that the other overhead.
I asked the question about it going overhead there since there was overhead, and I don't remember.
Maybe LCUB
reason.
didn't want them on the risers for some reason.
That's kind of my memory of it.
Well, it's fine. Well, obviously, we love utilities underground. I mean,
If
I
they
feel
could
sorry
put
for the
them
contractor who has to
overground.
do all the thread and the needle out there.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
I mean, if
but
they
it
could
is
put
what
it
it is.
overhead through there, that would make sense to me, and I would think would be cheaper for Comcast to do it that way. But
yeah. Oh, yeah. The
I mean, that would be
3-inch
our
directional
preference.
bores. I mean, it's pretty expensive. Well, you're only going to open dig at your PEDs, correct? I mean, normally when a straight shot like that, usually they can go 400 feet or so with a directional bore if you're going straight.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I mean, there's not a lot of disturbance back there by. I'm really thinking about the walking trail, thinking about that walking trail and disturbance and I'm sure staff's going to.
that was a concern of ours.
right,
That's why I had that as a comment about the sidewalk and pedestrian facilities.
Is there going to be a letter of credit posted by Comcast on this?
Well, that's something that you all could recommend.
Well, I don't know. I'm just thinking about just weird things
Bottom,
that
yeah.
landscaping things that just need to be buttoned up after the fact. Not trying to make things more difficult for you, Billy, or your client, but it just keeps everybody honest. And if you do everything you say you're going to do, you get your letter of credit back, and if you don't,
Yeah.
then it's going to could cost your letter of credit. So I mean, historically, how have we done? I mean, this is a little bit bigger utility expansion than what
normally
typically
we
see.
haven't required a letter of credit, but this is a really big project with 10,000 linear feet of conduit. So
What's our experience with Comcast in the town? So that's kind of what I was thinking. We have a lot of experience with Charter and TDS
I don't
as
know.
far as fiber
Yeah.
and telecommunications go. But Comcast is a little bit newer vendor inside
Yeah.
the town of Farragut.
I think given the scale of this project, you all could certainly recommend that as an additional item to the subject twos. I mean, I
I want it to be reasonable. I don't,
Yeah.
but again, I just, if there's an area that needs to be stabilized, or
Yeah.
a lot of times when you dig up an open pit and you close it back up, it all settles, and then you got a hole around the ped, and then you get water down in there, and it's just, especially right next to a trail. If we've got a ped right next to a trail, then you could affect the subgrade of the trail.
Yep. Yeah, I
Billy,
agree.
what are your? I mean, you do a lot of utility design work. I mean, what are your thoughts about? I mean, it's a pretty large scale utility project here. Your thoughts about having a letter of credit requirement on here, something reasonable, or they could post a bond. I mean, if they'd rather do a bond, but use a letter of credits, you can get from your bank for free.
Right. I mean, I wouldn't think that they'd have a problem getting it.
No, not a company that big.
A lot of the utility projects we're working, when our client would be the utility.
Right.
So, there's not a bond in the place because of that, but if we're working for a developer, then there is a bond. So, I mean, I get what you're saying, though.
I guess we just don't have a lot of experience with Comcast. I have some experience with Comcast on office buildings in Knoxville, doing fiber to an office, but it's not on this scale.
Right.
And I just said the town of Farragut, we don't have a lot of experience, so we just, until we kind of build that experience, it'd be kind of nice to have something of assurance that if there's some issues, we got a asphalt failure somewhere because of something that was done and caused by Comcast. Again, usually 12 months is all we're going to hold something like that, and then turn it loose on something as simple as this. And maybe it's released at the completion. But, I mean, my instinct is there probably needs to be something out there just because we don't have an experience with Comcast on this that just keeps everybody honest. Says, hey, we're going to come back and address anything that maybe wasn't addressed, when the final contractor wrapped up. Sometimes they get in a hurry or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Are you aware of any issues they've had in the city of Knoxville with this?
I'm not. They're a fairly new client with us, within the last year or 2 years.
Yeah.
How close is this to our walking trails and the
It's pretty close. I mean, like Noah said, and it's close to a number of sidewalks too, and that's why I had that as a comment from the staff's perspective, is just to making sure that they don't interfere with any of our existing facilities.
Some of these plans, Rita, they're actually underneath our walking trail, which is fine. But they're boring underneath
Yeah.
our walking trail, which we do all the time. But again, things happen, and sometimes somebody gets a little crazy trying to guide the boring machine, and I'm sure they would fix it. But
And I've seen
a letter of credit
settlement
guarantees they're going to fix it.
They'll probably run into some rock back there at the interstate, because there's a lot of rock in that area. So that's another thing. I think that ought to be, and maybe that should be a subject too, is just to have them revisit whether they could go overhead back there again. See if that's something that they could revisit, because
I suspect that if they could, they would have already done it, because it's going to be a
Probably would
lot
have.
cheaper than what they're doing here.
Yeah,
But my
I would
thought is,
think
Billy, in my experience, when I've hit rock boring,
You just
it
move
means
it
I'm
around.
either moving it or I'm getting out of Traco, and
Yeah.
I'm open digging it, which means everything gets torn up, and that's okay. That's part of life. Sometimes we got to deal with that, but I think I'd be a little more comfortable if we could just have a letter of credit. I think if this engineering staff could determine something that's real reasonable, that is posted by the applicant or the contractor. And, quite frankly, most of those contractors that are getting subbed out to do that, they already have bonds. They're used to posting bonds. Usually a bond costs you, a couple percentage points versus a letter of credit. You can get it, from your banker for free.
Right.
So, like I said, we're not trying to create any hardships for you. It's somebody new in the town of Farragut. It's a big scope of work,
Yep.
and we just want to make sure that there's any damages that they get taken care of. Because otherwise there's no certificate of occupancy that we can deny them
Yeah, exactly.
that says, hey, you didn't do what you said you would do.
Okay.
So,
So we're not covered with that by subject to number 2?
Well, I mean, that's
I got
helpful.
a question. I thought that.
That's why I had it as a note. Like I said, we
Going away
typically
from
haven't
using
required
cables
a
all
letter of
together.
credit for utilities.
well, this is fiber optic. Yeah.
But it is a big
I'm saying-
project.
Now, fiber optics, been using it for a long time. They're starting to use just, broadcast.
You mean like cell towers and things in lieu of?
Cell, rods or
5G.
whatever you want to call them.
5G technology.
Well, I think the reality is if you're a business and you need a lot of bandwidth,
Yeah.
the only way to do it is with fiber
Fiber.
today. Now, the technology with 5G may change everything, but we're not there yet. And it may, 5G may make all this stuff redundant. Who knows?
Does anybody else have any questions or comments? Do you want to put that in the form of a motion, Noah?
I have a question.
Come up to the, come.
Would you, ma'am, would you mind, if you don't mind,
We need to get you come
coming
up
up
to
to the
the,
microphone, and if you don't mind giving your name and address, and we'll be happy to try to address any questions or concerns.
Jenna Tamburino, 10822 Dundee Road, Stonecrest subdivision. I'm trying to understand exactly where this conduit is going to be affecting greenways. Can you clarify that for me?
Well, there's a lot of pedestrian areas that are inside right-of-ways and easements.
Yes.
And that's a natural place for utilities
Well,
to go.
absolutely. I'm just
So
trying to understand where on Parkside. because
everywhere.
Okay.
I mean,
'cause
it's-
I walk in that area, so
Yeah.
I guess my question would be, how long do you expect those greenways to be unusable? Like, if you're digging them up, we won't be able to walk on them, correct? Is that, I'm just trying to, yeah, okay. Okay.
except wherever their connections
Put the
are.
boring
So
machine
Okay.
in
they,
where
they'll,
have to
they do a
get
boring machine that
access.
actually bores underground for a long distance, and then it pops up.
Awesome.
They basically make their connection, for lack of a better word, put their little pedestal, which is a small little, you've seen
Okay.
little pedestal, little green pedestal sitting around.
Absolutely.
And then normally with stuff like this, they won't close the walking trail. Obviously, if they had an issue with rock or, something unforeseen, there might be a temporary closure. But most of all, what they're proposing, which is very common with other underground utilities. I mean, they're where the sidewalks go and walking trails. That's just part of it. That's the natural place to put those utilities. We hope. We hope there wouldn't be any closure with it unless there's something happens that they hit a water line and they got to dig everything up to fix the water line or a gas line. Then they
Absolutely.
do what they got to do to dig it all up and maybe close it then.
So it would just be something unexpected.
Okay. Okay.
I'm sure it's something that you're going to get to fairly quickly if it's like that too.
Yes, the production work was gonna be with that boring, so if they encounter anything else, they need to get that done fast.
Right.
So are we adding a letter of credit, or does number 3 take care of that? Or number 2? I guess.
Number 2.
Number 2.
I'd say to add it.
I think we would need to add it as a substitute number 4.
Okay.
Billy, if I can give you and your client any contract advice, you might want to avoid construction from about November 15th till the end of December or January over there. Especially if you got to do any road closures, your contractors are not gonna enjoy that traffic.
Oh, yeah.
I think the retailers enjoy it, and we obviously enjoy their sales tax dollars. But nevertheless, you might, for whatever it's worth.
Okay.
So.
Okay, Noah, are you going to?
I am. I'm going to make a motion to approve a request from Comcast to install underground conduit along portions of Parkside Drive, North Campbell Station Road, Campbell Lakes Drive, Lake Edge Drive, as well as I-40, subject to items 1, 2, and 3, and posting a bond or letter of credit as deemed in an amount appropriate by staff.
Yeah, we only accept letters of credit, so you might want to.
Okay. I may
Rephrase
revise
that.
that to eliminate the word bond.
Okay.
Second?
Second. Oh, you second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Billy.
Yeah, we don't really want to use a bond.
Item number 9, discussion and public hearing on site plan for the Knoxville Farragut Storage LLC, 11775 Snyder Road, 6 acres, Zone C-2, Knoxville Farragut Storage LLC applicant.
Involves a site plan for the former U.S. Golf site there at the western intersection of Snyder Road and North Campbell Station Road. The proposal is for 3 freestanding buildings, self-storage buildings, 2 of which would be 1-story, and then 1 that would be 3-story. As you all may recall, I'm sure, there was a conceptual site plan that was presented to you all back in March. Since that time, we've actually now formally removed many warehouses from the C2 zoning district, but this particular property was temporarily exempted from those provisions, since we did know that they had the intent of developing this as a mini warehouse. So the existing building, of course, and most of the site would be demolished and redeveloped as part of this. They also are actually moving the driveway access further to the west, further away from the intersection of Snyder Road and Campbell Station Road, which is a good thing, at least at this point. There is a platted right-of-way along the western portion of the property, but that's, whether or not that ever becomes a public street is kind of up in the air at this point. That was platted many years ago in anticipation of possibly relocating the interchange, so we all know that hasn't happened yet, so and don't know whether that will anytime soon. So I think for the short term, the access point is in a preferred location. They also are constructing a walking trail that would basically parallel North Campbell Station Road, and that's a substantial benefit to the town. In staff's opinion, that's a pretty pretty long section of walking trail, and it's very well separated from Campbell Station Road. They also have a landscape plan that's going to the Visual Resource Review Board next week for the landscaping for the project, and they'll have some street tree plantings along the walking trail. The remaining staff comments are on the site plan are at your places, and probably the one that probably needs a little more discussion deals with the buildings themselves. This is the grading. You can see most of the grading is within where the existing development is present. This is what the one-story buildings are proposed to look like. I know the architect's here, and she can go over the appearance of all three buildings in more detail and the materials they're proposing. We certainly think that some of the materials that they're proposing would constitute masonry. Then there's some others that we do not feel would meet the language and the requirements of the architectural design standards in terms of masonry. They are proposing some concrete areas, and the design standards require that if you're going to use detailed concrete, it has to be in a form that resembles traditional masonry panels. It has to be detailed such that it's similar in scale to genuine brick or stone. It has to also have mortar as part of the material. It has to be mortared in place essentially and have that authentic look of masonry. With that being said, I think again the applicant, their architect is here, and she could probably go over what they're proposing and answer any specific questions you all have. I've got the old materials board. I don't know if that's still relevant, or if you want me to, if you wanted to come up and you have anything you want to show the. Have anything on the civil aspect of the plan?
Well, we've got some civil out, where the cut lines are to fit into the topography there. We're moving some of the trees. Are those slopes gonna be just seeded? Any riprap involved at all in any
No,
of those?
sir. No, they'll be like seeded and matted.
Yeah.
So like 3-to-1s?
Yeah, 3-to-1.
Okay.
2.5 to 1.
2.5,
aren't they?
I think, on this one.
Yeah.
Just have to
There's
be
a,
on the
matted.
west
That's about as steep as you can mow.
yeah.
That's-
That's
You mow it. I wouldn't want to mow it on a tractor, but you could walk behind it and mow it.
yeah.
So, I want to say thank you for that walking trail. We always hoped we'd get a walking trail through that property on that side, all the way up Campbell Station. We know it's a big expense, and it's a great community amenity, and we thank you for that. So,
Tell us who you are and give us an address of your business.
Michael Manson, owner representative of the property on Snyder Road.
Mailing address?
200 Wingo Way, Mount Pleasant, South Carolina.
Gretchen Weaver, I'm with SAA Architects. Address is 600 North Hartley Street, Suite 150, York, PA.
I brought those.
Yes, we'll open it up to you all for any questions that you may have. Obviously, starting with Billy, what you just did, and then anything associated with the architectural.
Yeah, that's still the same information. Thank you for saving those.
I think it's remarkable, you guys. I'm seeing maybe just one retaining wall that's not that tall, and I knew that site someday was going to be tough to try to figure out how to put a grading plan in there and deal with that topography. And the only one that I'm seeing is kind of at the northeast corner back there, which is looks like a little short couple of feet, and that's it. I think that's remarkable that you guys have figured how to do this. Obviously, I assume you're using the back of like the storage. You're actually incorporating the foundation wall into your retaining wall, which is a great way of, two birds with one stone. Is that way you can hide? You're not looking at dealing with that retaining wall and maintenance and the expense. So I applaud you with that.
Do you want them to go over the materials they're proposing specifically so that y'all have a feel?
Yes,
I think any other civil design, site design stuff that anybody had any questions about? And then we kind of jump into architecture. I think we're pretty good with your civil design. Obviously, you've eliminated one of those curb cuts, and we're happy about that. And your walking trail is awesome, and you've done a good job with it with that site. So.
Oh, that won't be an issue. That's a typo. Had to be.
So we're ready. If you want to go over your materials, that would be great.
Can you please speak into the microphone?
Sure can. All right, so what we can see, and Mike, could you help point at stuff on there for me? So we have black and white brick options. And they are at the entry to the facility. That'll mark the corner of that intersection as well. And then beyond that, for the base, we're using a cast concrete. This is a blow up of the image. These are 24 by 48. That's a standard stone size. And that does have the ability to have a grout joint. So we would have that filled. This would be a stained product. It won't have a sheen to it. This is the mold. This is actually an image of the actual mold. So it has a little bit of a sheen to it. But in real life, it wouldn't have that. We are proposing that it would get stained about this color, which is a fairly natural stone color, mixed in with the regular concrete. For the areas that we have called out as the cast concrete that's brick, this is actually an image of the brick itself. This is a product that comes out of the mold. So you can see that there is a significant dimension to it, that this is actually created from real brick. And then we would be able to grout that joint if we chose to, or leave it as a rake joint, depending on how we want to use that. The rest of this is a cast concrete product. It's detailed to look like it's a patterned concrete accent. And I think we've met our 75% requirement with how much concrete we've got showing. So.
The comment, just briefly touching on Mark's point, is in the design manual, it does reference that an approved and allowable type of material is concrete that has been detailed in modules to look and resemble brick, masonry, etc. I know that an initial concern, it was for us as well, and it was a learning experience with us with Tilt-Up, was the actual masonry. As Gretchen pointed out, it is a true masonry product. It's not fake. It is pieces of masonry that they put into a mold, pour concrete, I guess, on the back side of it, and when it's tilted up, true concrete or true brick parcels or pieces are sitting in there.
And is that, have the, Mark, what was it you were concerned about with between the pieces of brick?
Well, you have to have mortar
Mortar,
for it to be
yeah.
considered masonry. There's no polyurethane in this, right? It's all,
No,
okay.
it's all clay-based and concrete-based.
I guess the staff's question on some of this, and maybe it's a little hard to see or read, But some of the modules appear to be beyond the scale that you would typically expect with genuine brick or stone. That's the ones that we didn't feel like they met the requirements of the design standards. Certainly, I think a lot of what they're proposing is would appear to meet the standards. But then there was some areas in those beige areas where the scale of the product, it was really not, in that.
Can you point that out, Mark? Where?
Well, I don't have the thing doesn't work tonight, so but it's the bigger blocks, those big blocks there.
Yeah, I'm real comfortable with, like, from the water table down, the base, all the big cast stone, the 24 by 48, and I in the panelized brick. I think that definitely meets the intent of our ADS. The big squares, which when I'm scaling those, I mean, to me they look like they're about 6 by 6. That are, they look like big square marshmallows that are the kind of picture framing. I get, to me, I think that has a scale issue. I appreciate what you're doing trying to break it up. Obviously, it's a big building, and if you just did it all in panelized brick, it might be a little boring and just have a lot of monotony with it. But I'm just wondering if there's some other ways that you could take, like I said, I think from your water table down, that whole first floor elevation, I think the big foundation stone is cool. It's very appropriate because, that's your foundation, big and blocky and bulky, and I think that looks great. And again, your brick, your panelized brick, I think is fine. Obviously, it would need to be mortared. I think the photograph you showed us actually didn't have any grout or mortar in it.
Right.
And so it would need to be mortared. But I think this area that I'm seeing on here, that's, I guess I'm going to call the ivory color and the tan. Albeit I think your color choices are very appropriate. I can't get comfortable with the material, those big concrete panels there. Obviously, if you're doing tilt-up construction, you've got a lot of things to choose from as far as designs and patterns and, basically what kind of stamp they use in their form when they pour it. And so I'm hoping that you can pull some other things out of your toolbox and say, here's some alternatives. And we're trying to do this without stalling your project. This is a great time of year to get started on that, and we're in the dry season, so if you've got some other ideas, we'd love to hear them. But I'm just speaking for me, I'm not comfortable with the way that those big concrete panels and the big, what I'm calling the big square marshmallow things, are looking on that building.
Sure. That's absolutely a fair comment, and we certainly there are 200 different liners that we could use. So we can certainly put in some more, sort of shorten the height of them so they're less blocky. Right now they are 5 by 4.
Okay.
So, yeah, I mean, it would be more traditional to be more like 2 by 4.
Yeah, probably no
be
larger than 2 by 4.
Right.
And if you could, we'd prefer because it kind of emulates the brick that if it is rectangular, not that square,
Sure.
and obviously you want to get creativity with, running bond or straight stack and doing some other things like that. But I think getting away from those big squares would, technically it's 4 by 5. It's not a square, but
Right.
But you
I
know
understand
what
what
I'm
you
saying.
It is visually square looking, so
Right.
I understand what you're saying. We can certainly modify the joint pattern in that so that it does look more like a traditional stone product. It would have sort of a smooth texture to it, so it would have a slightly different texture than the base does, but,
Okay.
but I think we can definitely accommodate that.
Well, I mean, I think smooth textures. I mean, you look at Indiana limestone. Think of how smooth that is. I mean, it's
Yeah, it can
you
be.
could you put a piece of paper on and draw on it, and it wouldn't be it's that smooth. So
Correct.
I'm fine with the texture, and again, I appreciate the fact that it's just not all brick. I mean, it'd be really easy to say, well, just put use the liner that's just all brick and make it all the same.
Right.
And I think it'd kind of get lost. It just looked like it looked like a big, just old industrial utility building, and that's not what we want. So we appreciate what you're trying to do here and comply with our ordinances.
Sure, we can absolutely look at that.
Does that answer your concerns, Mark?
Well, we'd need to see what they come up with.
Right.
I mean, obviously, we'd have to share that with you all if you don't want it to come back next month.
Well, we're happy to see it next month. We just don't want to slow your project down. So what we've done occasionally in the past is maybe if you've submitted some other materials Yeah, obviously photographs are going to work a lot better to do this electronically. To the staff can then distribute it to the planning commission. The planning commission gives some feedback, and that way you're not waiting till August, till the third Thursday in August to come back and get approval.
Great.
Because otherwise, if we could get you approved, then, you guys could get rolling on it.
Yeah.
And there might be a way that, you could go ahead and start some of your, coordinating with staff and the town administrator, if you want to start your demolition and some of your site work pending as we're working through this, if you're concerned about the season or not. I mean, and you may not be ready there. You may not have your financing or other things in place, but if you're chomping at the bit, which I probably would be this time of year to do a big site like this, then that might be something that we could look at of getting you going, because you're 95% of the way there. You just got to work through these details on the architecture. I think everything else is pretty good.
Great.
In my ideal world, if there is a way of having Billy's group receiving an approval where he's able to proceed and wrap up his CDs and get them submitted in for permitting, meanwhile working on a parallel path of Gretchen's company.
Right. Doing the architectural
Taking
CDs.
care of what she needs to
Right.
do from the aesthetics, it puts us in a position of hopefully by September, being able to be out there breaking ground, doing what we need to do, and hopefully then we're just a month or so behind that of building plans being permitted and released.
So you're not concerned about trying to get going right away before the next meeting. So let's don't even introduce that, because it is a little bit of a headache for the staff to be able to try to give you kind of a partial permit to do some things but not other things. So if that's what I'm hearing, if that's your schedule, then maybe let's just keep continuing the course that we're talking about. Try to get you approval with a new submittal of some of your construction materials on this this tan and ivory area, and then we can get it.
I was hearing.
Yeah,
I thought you wanted to get the civils going.
I would like for the civil to be able to proceed forward with going in for their permits.
Yeah,
You mean for a grading permit?
For grading and
Demolition.
demo,
You could get a demo now. I mean, you could get a demo probably through town
Yes,
pretty
you
quick.
could. You could get
You'd be
that.
eligible. There might be a little bit of erosion control or something you might want to do, but being that
You
got
have
big
quite a
parking-
few subject twos. I'm not saying there are any
Right.
that are terribly significant, but I would say by the time you address all these, it's probably going to be the time for the next meeting, frankly.
Well, you're right. I mean, you've got.
It'd be much cleaner if you just submitted new elevations and we put that on the agenda. And we'll look at it obviously ahead of time. We could possibly even, if you can get it in early enough, we could add it to the staff developer agenda for the next meeting. But it would be, these site plans are a set and they include the architectural exterior elevations. So it really all needs to be finished at once. You certainly could go ahead and get a demolition permit, I would imagine. There's certain things you have to satisfy in order to get that, but you could be working toward that, and maybe even a land disturbance permit. It just depends on what all's involved, but I think we need to have the full set finished, before we issue a full grading permit, including the architectural aspect of it.
Well, the land disturbance, if you wanted to jump in, that'd let you clear and grubbing and so forth. But I do think that if you could get your materials, kind of what we're thinking, I think you kind of have the flavor of what we're talking about, trying to bring that scale down a little smaller and rectangular, and don't give up on the idea to break it up. We still appreciate you breaking up those facades, and then we could get that circulated, and then get it on the agenda for next month. So.
Also saying that we're comfortable with the civil site aspects.
Right.
And so the paperwork and all the work to get ready to just,
Billy's
have the equipment ready to go.
Right.
Right. But yeah, I think site. There's a few subject twos on here, but really most of it has to do with the architecture. I mean, maybe there's some site lighting stuff that's probably coming from your electrical engineer, and so there's a few other things, but most of it is pretty easy. If you're the bicycle rack thing, you might have to, depending on what your mean, I can see it both ways of why somebody going to a storage facility is not going to ride their bike, but the reality is you still got to provide something, and so you guys can address that. We just never really contemplated bicycle parking requirements in a storage facility. Yeah, so y'all are on BZA already? We are. Okay, well,
Yeah.
y'all can deal with that.
They have to determine their parking, general parking and for off-street parking requirements.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Obviously, there's a couple little things that are still kind of moving targets on Billy's site design, but I don't see anything big on there. I mean, you guys have done a good job putting that site together and figuring how to redevelop it.
just to
So,
be
Mark-
clear from your all's perspective, you talk about just revisiting these beige areas, I think, where there's the larger kind of out-of-scale modules.
Yeah, and the
Yes.
rendering on the
Yeah.
print there, they kind
Okay.
of, as he's describing, they kind of look like marshmallows, those blocks.
The square marshmallows that my kids like with s'mores, not the old-fashioned that I grew up with, but the new
And
style.
kind of the areas between them are pretty big too, so that, I mean, that would need to be probably addressed.
So,
Okay.
Mark, where do we need to go with this to?
Let me look at that comment. Well, you could say that comment number 5 going to be will be hopefully addressed with the resubmittal and be reviewed next month.
And basically, we're leaving that subject to still on there.
Yeah, I mean,
We
it
just
really
need to
would
leave
be.
it on there.
So it really, you could approve it subject to these 19 comments,
Okay.
with the understanding that obviously since that is a subject to, they have to come back
Right.
here and satisfy that. So
And are you all okay with the rest of the comments and working through those?
Yes.
Anybody else have any questions or comments? Do you all have any more comments or
This may not
questions?
be important, but how do you access the inside of these?
That hallway.
Well, I see that, do you have to walk?
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. There's so as you drive around this side of the building,
Right.
there would be a doorway.
Okay,
Enter
so you
in.
walk to all these inside.
Yes, ma'am.
Usually people take like a little dolly or a cart or something, but this is kind of the new thing in storage, is this style of storage is,
How wide are those hallways?
They're 5 feet wide.
Okay.
And then there are one or two one-story that are separate?
Yes, that's what we were just referring to. There's two individual single-story buildings.
In addition to this.
Yes.
and I think all those are brick, right, other than the doors. That's what's over there on the right-hand side. That's the one-story buildings, what they would look like.
Down below. So the elevator, I guess, for the main building.
Yes.
Is it just is there only one bank at the entrance?
There's two, we have two elevators in this building.
So this is the office here. This is that door right next door, and we have an elevator here and an elevator there that is accessible on the back side. So that would face the building.
How close is that to the door on the back? If you were going,
25 feet.
so it's right there, okay. Thank you.
you have to sprinkle a building like this?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments?
I'd like to offer a motion of approval for the site plan for Farragut Storage LLC, 11775 Snyder Road, subject to items 1 through 19.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 10, discussion and a public hearing on a site plan for Kingston Pike Village, Phase 1, apartments, 115 South Watt Road, 18.65 acres, zone PCD, Watt Road Investments LLC applicant.
You can take it, I guess. Well, yeah, why don't you leave that if you don't mind? Yeah. If y'all don't need it. Yeah, thank you. That way I can compare it to what she does.
Someday we're never gonna have to look at this site plan ever again.
Okay.
I thought you were going to say my face.
We did that too.
You see me every Wednesday, though.
Yes, I do.
Okay, this property, we've got a few slides here just showing. This is this is phase one of the PCD, Planned Commercial Development Project at the southwestern intersection of South Watt Road and Kingston Pike. This particular phase would include the multifamily portion. As you all know, there's also a big box that's part of the overall development and a couple of retail buildings at Kingston Pike. This particular phase would include, as proposed currently, about 228 apartments, and it would provide for the principal areas of open space for this particular development. These are some renderings of what the apartment buildings are proposed to look like. 3- and 4-story buildings, as you can see there. There's the clubhouse. And this particular phase, this is kind of what they look like from side view, street view. And then here's kind of an aerial view showing the green space and the buildings on the property there. This is about 10, almost 11 acres of the 18.5 acres that's part of the planned commercial development. We talked about this as a workshop item back in December and then and in January, and then there was some items that the applicant brought before you all last month for some additional clarification. The staff would, remind you that this is a planned commercial development, as we've talked about in the past. It is supposed to be held to a higher standard than what you would typically see in a regular multifamily or commercial development. There are certain key things that these type projects are required to have, they're required to have integration within and to what's around them, good pedestrian and vehicular connectivity, a quality design, and then the provision for functional common open space that could be actively used. The functional open space is really key component of this type of development. It's a type of development that if you go to, it would signal something different from what you would typically see in this case, apartment development. It would have some kind of identity to it that you wouldn't otherwise be able to find in most apartment developments. The remaining staff comments on this plan are included at your places. There's a couple of them that might need to be discussed in more depth. The first one is that based on the plan shown, they appear to have a deficit of about 41 parking spaces. Now, we did amend the parking requirements a couple of years ago for apartments, as you all may recall. We changed it to 1.75 spaces per unit, and that was based on some feedback we received from multifamily developers that were looking at doing some projects in the town. The PCD is required to meet the parking requirements. It's in the language of the PCD that it has to meet the parking requirements in Chapter 4 of the zoning ordinance. So if they're going to vary from what we require, and certainly I'm, as you all know, not a proponent of over parking, but this is a pretty substantially underparked development. I don't believe that based on the use, you got apartments, and then to the north you're going to have a big box. I don't think, given the topographic change on the property and the fact that you'll have a big box parking lot to the north, It wouldn't appear to be a good candidate for sharing parking. It just wouldn't be convenient for people living in apartments to walk down to the parking lot at the big box to access their vehicles or take groceries up to their units. So I think it would be a problem candidate for shared parking in this context. So I think the underpark situation is something that we do need to discuss. The language in the zoning ordinance says that if you are underparked or overparked, and we remember we did add some flexibility to allow for that, but the applicant does need to demonstrate that what they're proposing is, based on the parking demands that they see for typical projects, throughout the majority of the year. So you don't want a situation where something is way overparked or way underparked. So that's one topic of discussion. And I don't know if you want to just talk about
Let's do one at a time.
Yeah, that's fine.
I'm going to jump in.
Yes, sir.
What? Do we count the garages as parking spaces?
Yep.
So that's already been put into the calculation?
Yes.
So even including the garages, you're still short 41?
Well, if you remember correctly, when we came in front of you to rezone, our first plan, staff and y'all said it looks like a sea of asphalt. So we took out almost 120 parking spaces we have not added any parking spaces from the concept plan. This is exact number of parking spaces we've been having since the approved concept plan.
You've subtracted parking spaces from the concept plan?
Some for putting in the maintenance building, yes. We lost 8 spaces there.
Where's the maintenance building? Is that
Right
the little
up-
gazebo out front?
No, it's,
Yeah, that's the one up in the upper left, isn't it,
Upper
Mark?
left, right?
that's the maintenance building.
Okay. So you lost some parking there.
We lost 8 spaces there. Well, we actually lost 6 spaces, but the 2 spaces that are there are also used for car washing.
Okay.
So if someone's washing the car, they're parked. But if they're not washing the car and somebody wants to wash the car, then we got a problem. We'll have to sort that problem out. But
Are the garages 2-car garages or 1-car garages?
1-car garage.
Okay. And so you're getting credit for one spot for each one of those garages.
Yes.
Oh, which
Yes.
makes sense. You park a car in
Yep.
there, that's a parking spot.
Yes.
Okay.
And the tenants will, correct me if I'm wrong, Pat, but 2 of them have access into units?
Yeah, 2 per building.
Each of the 4, 2 of them have internal access to a unit on the same level.
Well, the one that suffers if you don't have enough parking is you and your tenants.
Yep.
And so what I'm thinking is our 1 point, we used to be 2 parking spots per unit, and then we changed it to 1.75.
Yeah, we lowered it, actually.
Yeah, she lowered it down to 1.75.
2.
Yeah.
Yeah, because when I
He was
rewrote the
involved with
ordinance.
it, yeah.
Well, let me ask you this. I'm wondering, is there some industry standard that says that our 1.75 is still too much? Obviously, we don't want you to run out of parking spots for your tenants. That's just dumb design.
Well, let's put it this way.
But if you're telling us that, hey, we think we have sufficient parking for all of our tenants, then maybe our 1.75 is too high. Now, unfortunately, that's not on the agenda tonight to do a
No.
text amendment for that. But I'd like to hear from, folks that are, whatever the new industry standard is for apartments. Is 1.75 still the industry standard?
It pretty much is still the industry standard, but as you remember, when we were doing the concept plan to rezone this property, because the grocery store requires a 4:0 ratio, and the apartments and the commercial area for the 2 shops, originally we had a lot more parking shown, and we kept cutting it back and cutting it back and cutting it back.
Well, that was parking for your retail. That was parking that we didn't like the sea of asphalt
Not
for the
just
retail.
the retail, it also affected everything on the site. We took 120 parking spaces off the original plan. We are now lost 8 spaces due to a maintenance building that is required, and we have no problem with that.
Hold on, we require a maintenance building?
No, The development requires a maintenance building for maintaining the apartments.
Well, let me ask you this.
You do not require a maintenance building.
Well, I didn't
no.
think so, but you
No.
said it's required, and so we're kind of, it's like
I said-
we're getting blamed for you running out of parking spots.
No,
Okay.
no, it's not you.
Okay. Let me ask you this: where, if tenant runs out of parking, where are they going to park? Down there by the grocery store? Is that?
Yes.
And you think topographically that makes sense for them to walk down there by the grocery store and walk up that hill to those apartments?
If you can find another spot to shove a parking space in there, I'd love to see it.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is if you're telling me 1.75 is the correct number.
But if you
And-
remember also, when we were going through rezoning, I heard staff say on more than one occasion, it's an overall parking and the ratios don't really count. We're trying to make a better situation here. Now he's bringing up ratios. And I understand staff is doing what they need to do.
I think you have a topography issue that if you're going to do shared parking, it needs to make sense.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, it's not the planning commissioners that are going to suffer, and it's not the staff that's going to suffer, but it's going to be your residents if they're having to carry their groceries up that hill because they're huffing and puffing trying to get up that hill. They're going to be ticked off.
Well, actually,
because,
if I knew I couldn't find a space and I had a whole bunch of groceries, I'd double park, unload, and then go park and walk back. I used to live in an apartment when I first
agree.
moved here, so, and it's still fresh in my mind, and many times of having to trying to find a parking spot near my apartment and
So-
having to park 3 units over.
So let me ask you this: your parking for the grocery store that's now at four per
It's a
thousand.
4 per thousand.
So you're not overparked down there, but what
Nope.
you're thinking is timing differences. People
Oh,
come
yeah.
home at night, so the grocery store is not going to be used.
Grocery store's gonna be busy, holidays, from 5 to 7, 8.
Do you have your overall site plan that we could? I mean, obviously we like the idea of less asphalt. It makes sense. It's good
right.
for the environment, less impervious surface, and there's no reason to go spend money if you don't have to spend money. We like shared parking, but it needs to make sense.
Yes.
Let me just give you a perspective on this, but the area that's involved in this phase, you're looking at about 20 units per acre. That's the cause of the problem.
Piece of the density.
Is the density.
Right.
I mean, the R6 allows up to 12. They're looking at 20 units per acre.
But that's the
in this
beauty of the PCD.
part
It
yes,
allows you
it
some
is.
flexibility.
But you're almost going in the opposite direction of what the PCD is about. I mean, you're trying to cram more stuff on a small piece
And
of
we've had
property.
this discussion since we started
I know,
rezoning the property.
but I think
It's
that's-
been an approved
it's
concept
relevant
plan.
because it
following the
affects
approved
your
Mark,
concept
let's do one mark at a time, and then
It's
we want to hear what
relevant
everybody has to
because
say.
it's what's creating part of this parking problem. That's why it's relevant. That's why I bring it up. You just don't have the physical space, the real estate, to get the density they're proposing and then meet all the other requirements. That's just a fact.
Do you have any compact parking on this?
No.
I mean, that's not going to get you 41. But we do allow for some compact car parking that would allow you to tighten some parking up and help reduce that deficit.
I understand what you're saying. We will look at that.
All right.
But I mean, to be truthfully honest, the last time I drove through an apartment complex, there weren't many subcompact cars. Most of the people that are living in, I hate to say it, but most people living in apartments are driving better cars than I'm driving. I'm driving a 2006 Acura TL.
I'm just trying to give you some other tools
Well,
to look at.
I appreciate it.
To
too.
be able
Thank you.
to address this. If we were looking at it as a standalone project, you probably got too much going on and not enough parking on that size of a piece of property. So we've got to say, okay, if there's an opportunity for shared parking, which we encourage and applaud,
Which we have.
but it has to make sense for you to be able to. I mean, I've been involved with shared parking, but it needs to make sense, and it needs to be something that some tenant is not going to be constantly complaining to you and maybe even to the town. Well, there's no parking, and you'd be surprised all the complaints that come to the town that shouldn't come to the town, but they do anyway. And the town has to address them. But I guess what I'm saying is we just want you to incorporate good philosophies of good design in this, and not do something out of the get-go that you kind of concede that it may create a problem. You're going to run out of parking, and you're going to have to go park your car and then move your car. Doesn't necessarily, yes, it does help you from carrying the groceries up the hill, absolutely. But we just need to make sure that is there good connectivity, especially with the topography of being able to use that shared parking area.
And there is. There's, go ahead.
What distance would I have to walk? If
I-
I parked on the,
On the grocery store property?
the closest to the apartments?
It depends on which apartment you're in.
Well, but
I mean,
to the front of where the apartments start.
the building that is directly right there to the right of the roundabout, you'd be walking an additional 50 to 100 feet. Now, if you're parked in Building 9, which is all the way in the back corner near the maintenance building, then, yeah, you're going to be walking a significant distance. I mean, again, going up grades, yes. You would be going up some grades, yes. I'm not going to lie about that. But there, I mean, at the last meeting, if you remember, the developer, who unfortunately could not make it tonight, told you that he's about to sign the lease for the big box. So once we get approved on this, he's already asked me how fast I can get the drawings done.
You know, for the grocery store, to be able to get the
Yes.
grocery store, and that way
Yes.
all that parking is complete at one
Yes.
time.
It'll be, this is going to take, correct me if I'm wrong, Pat, 18 to 24 months to build this? Yes, and the grocery store will take about 9 to 12 months. And if we're following right along, the parking will be there. So, and I understand Mark's concern, and it's a concern of ours. We really had, I mean, we were trying to get the numbers up to the 1.75, but if you remember correctly, doing on the planning, when we were going through the concept plan, we kept being told, take parking out, take parking out, take parking out.
Well, I
Add
think
more
we're
islands.
really referring to the grocery store on
Well,
that. We
and
felt
I
like there was a
understand,
lot
but
of
that's-
parking for the
but
grocery store.
You got to remember, Noah, the grocery store parking is adjacent to the apartments.
Do we have whatever your latest site plan of the entire site, the master plan?
The master plan's been not changed. We're not changing anything from the master
I mean,
plan.
is that something we have tonight at our disposal? I mean, I remember
You'd have-
kind of what it looks
you'd-
like. I
you'd
just
have to
don't.
ask Mark.
I don't know.
I think it's in the PowerPoint. I think it was in your packets.
I don't have it in my
don't have it in
packet.
the packet.
No, sir.
Yeah, I apologize for that.
Well, that's okay. I mean, we're getting into the weeds, but this is a subject too that we need to deal with.
He did have in the full submittal a sheet, some sheets on it because they're wanting to grade, I think, the entire.
The grading plan would show the entire
So,
park.
Well,
Yeah.
that makes sense. So grade the whole thing at once.
Well, let's put it this way. I've already heard from 2 different graders that are bidding this project right now that the site basically balances, but we got to have a place to put it. And this is where we're getting all of our cut, so put it down where it needs to go.
It makes sense for you to grade the whole site.
Yes.
On a site like this, is
Yes.
do the whole thing at once. It's going to be less disturbance to
It's gonna be-
any of your. It's just easier.
Well, it's going to be ease of construction, and also it's going to be less time of disturbed areas going to be sitting there not being maintained too.
Mark, do you have any luck with that master plan? And I'm wondering, we don't even have the overhead projector anymore. I'm not sure even if
I've got it, the full set here though. Yeah, we could look at that.
Like I said, we love the idea of shared parking. It is something that we've tried to encourage and tried to get folks to implement. I think there's opportunities here with your peak times are different with apartments and a grocery store. We just got to make sure that the connectivity makes sense.
Well, just to the west of the building by the roundabout. Yeah, that's the grading plan. Yeah, but that doesn't show the parking on it. I mean, what he's talking about is the concept plan.
Yeah, I'd like to see the master plan.
The approved concept plan.
I mean, Bart, I'm sorry. I'm not making you. You're having to go upstairs now and. Well, I'd rather wait and look at the master plan. I'm not sure where I can, the grading plan. In the meantime, why don't we start working through, so we're not here till midnight, start working through some of these other items. Mark Bialik, why don't we ask you, out of these subject twos, which are the ones that you would particularly like to discuss? And I'm going to assume that if you don't want to discuss them, you're going to acquiesce to them.
Well, let me say the ones that we agree that we can take care of real quick, and we'll leave get the ones that I know we can do.
Well, if you can say you real quick, let's don't even talk about them, because we'll just leave them as
Well-
subject twos.
Well, as I say, number 5, we agree. Number 6, we'll look at. Number 7, we agree. Number 8, we agree. Number 9, that's a I dot and T crossing thing. 10 is a T. 11 is fine. 12, we'll double check to make sure that's fine. 13, I talked with Pat, we don't have any problem. 14 is staff. 15, I will work with Daryl on. 16, I've talked to the retaining wall people, that's something we can take care of. 17, okay, 17 is, yeah, we can take care of that. 18, typically I don't like to show that on a plan, because that's something that, wherever I place it, it's going to be in the wrong spot. It's something that has to be done in the field by whoever's overseeing the construction, because it moves. It's not something that's going to be a stagnant place. It'll move during construction.
What's a supplemental? Is that just, is that 2 lines of silt fence? You have,
Yeah.
is that what that means, supplemental? Okay.
No, I thought by supplemental means additional silt fence during the course of construction, adding additional silt fence so that you don't have an overloading
Well, I mean, he's saying
situation.
consider supplemental lines, but typically when you get one of the town of Farragut inspectors is going to come out and say, hey, it looks like, you've got a big slope here, you have a big volume of water, you need to add in another.
And
We're
that's-
not forcing this on you.
No,
These are things that are going to be addressed during the whole construction phase.
Right.
I think he's just saying you need to consider this.
We agree.
And where those lines would be without getting into aquatic buffers or things like that.
We added some
Okay.
silt fence to the plan, so
Okay.
that's not a problem. What one was that?
That was
number
19.
19. 18 is when I was talking about.
the
I usually refer to be coordinated between the contractor and the construction manager, so that it doesn't interfere with construction. I could show it in one spot and it'll be the wrong spot.
Well, I don't think we just don't want it down in, the drainage area.
Right,
And sometimes those guys
right.
wash out a concrete truck there and wash out wherever they can.
Well, and trust me, I know exactly what you're talking about. 20, we can work with them. 21, I thought we took care of that at the staff developer meeting. We talked, I would show the electric, a schematic of what I believe the electric would be, but the cable and the telephone, they put it wherever they're going to put it. I'm sorry, I mean, that's just the way life is. And showing it on a plan would be a best guess, and they're already complaining because the plan's got too much stuff on it. So we're going to add 2 more sets of lines to it. I mean, I know it's a requirement, but we sat and talked about this at the staff developer meeting
I'm trying to think like
specifically.
on a subdivision, and on normal commercial site plans, we're basically just showing a proposed area for it.
Yeah, but you got to remember, on an apartment complex,
There's a lot more going on.
there's a lot of utilities
agree.
going around, and to be honest, I can't design that.
Well, no, normally utility, the telephone company, or,
Same thing for
they
the-
design that.
Well, I agreed to do what I think they're going to do for the electric, and it is shown on the utility plan now. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, if we want it, I'll add it, but I think it's kind of ridiculous personally, because.
Well, I think that's consistent with what we've required in the
Okay,
past.
we'll add it.
I mean,
We'll add
I'm
it.
just,
That's not a problem.
All right.
22, I'll work with Daryl on. 23, we're still debating even doing raised crosswalks. So if we do them, I'll provide a detail.
Is that like a speed hump crosswalk? Is that what you're talking about?
Where we're talking about doing it is on the plan that's on the screen. Is
Like that?
this.
The
one
roundabout?
here. No, this one here.
We're doing that
This one here.
as a calming device, a speed slow down.
Excuse me, I'll get back in front of the mic, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. We're doing that because there's a trench drain right
Oh,
before
you're
it
trying to catch the stormwater.
To encourage capture of stormwater. That is an expense that we may not be doing, because I don't think we really need to do that, because
So you maybe will do it in a channel drain and not
we're
need
doing
that
a
bump.
12-inch wide trench drain across there, which can capture a whole lot of water before it gets out, and it's
So-
going from curb to curb.
I guess what we're saying is if you're going to do the raised crosswalks, we probably need to know what they
Yes,
look like.
right,
And if
I
you
agree.
want to take them out, that's fine, as long,
That's
you know,
right.
you're
That's why
the
we-
engineer to
right.
determine whether your storm drainage
And
works.
that's why I said, if we
Okay.
put them in, I will
Okay.
provide a detail.
Okay.
24, that's something I got to get from Alan Childers. We just haven't had, him and I have been playing phone tag.
Okay. Signage, that should be easy.
We have stop signs on the site layout plan now. And
Well, maybe you need
and
some cut sheets or details or something
There's
that's.
a detail on the detail sheet for a stop sign.
Well, man, you can just coordinate with staff and
Yeah,
say,
let's
hey,
coordinate it. It's
okay.
coordinating, yeah. 26, I'll coordinate with Daryl. 27, yes, we'll coordinate that. 28, 29, 30 are all things that are standard, so
Okay.
those are just, these are all.
So I'm telling, what I'm hearing here is that you want to spend some time talking about, obviously, the
parking.
shared parking items 2, 3, 4, and possibly 6.
Six is something that Pat and I need to coordinate a little bit more.
So I'm gonna put a check mark by that.
Yeah, we,
Okay.
Pat and I can coordinate that a little bit more, because that's the screening and stuff like that, of where we're gonna put where we expect to have a transformer screened or whatever.
Okay,
So-
I think I have your master plan. Why don't you come over and verify that this is the plan that you
Oh,
guys
I
are
can tell
working
right-
off of? If
that's-
it's an incorrect plan, then we're wasting our time looking at it.
That's it. I can tell right now it is. It is.
I wonder if there'd be a better location for the commissioners to take a look at this other than me sticking it in front of Miss Betty. You mean, put it in a chair next to Ed, and or I
Get
could.
here and I'll.
You know what? You know, I got an idea. Let me try
Yeah, I'll
this.
come up there
This doesn't help the folks in the audience or folks at home enjoying television on a Thursday night. I'll put it on this board.
We got a big audience tonight, I bet.
Here's,
Why don't you come over and?
here, no, oh, there's some clips on this, if you want.
Oh, yeah.
Marcus bringing out that light thing, he's gonna do some magic.
Anybody in the audience that'd like to come up and take a look at it?
Do I need to be a van of what? Okay. I'm louder.
Mr. Bilek, why don't you start pointing of where you envision this overflow parking for your apartments to be?
In this, well, this area right here is already allocated.
Okay, okay.
This area right here and some of this area right here. Because, I mean, be honest, how many times do you see many people park near a gas station?
Well, you're right. One employee may be in there.
Employee, and that's it. So, and except for this being a grocery store, except for being Thanksgiving week or Christmas week or a holiday week where they're getting a lot of traffic, all of this area right here will probably never be parked in. This area, and some of this area over here probably won't be parked in. This parking right here is for employees. So, I mean, I don't know how many employees this grocery store employs, but if it's more than 12 or 17, they can go right in here. But we're still gonna, I mean, 17 is already being eaten up right here. So, I mean, there's a lot of extra parking on an average day for this grocery store. The unusual days, like the week before Thanksgiving, the week before Christmas, any major holiday, that 4th of July, where people are gonna go barbecuing and they're gonna go get their supplies, they're gonna be here during the day, but at night, if need be, they can use this area right here and this area right here. And from here to here is approximately 100 feet.
And show us the route if you were going to go up to that open space area.
Right here?
Yeah, show us that route. Instead, I mean, you don't want somebody to walk all the way over to the roundabout
No,
and
they
up.
don't have to. They don't have to. There's this area, if you look on that plan right there, and if I'll use, I wish we had, Mark, do you have your laser pointer? Can I borrow your laser pointer? Just click, hit the top button. The red button? Okay. This area
call
right
Uber.
here, which is the open space area,
Okay.
this is a set of steps that comes up into the open space. This is a handicap space for someone who wants to, whether they're coming from down here or up in here, they can come in here, park, and this handicap ramp gets them down to the elevation of the thing, because we've.
Of the
raised
grocery,
this-
you can get all the way down the grocery
No,
store
no,
with, okay.
To the green space.
To the green space, that little, because it's,
6 feet above.
so it's that terrace that we talked about a few months ago. Okay.
Terraced area. right
Which
there.
I think actually, I like that idea. I'm just trying to figure out, again, I'm trying to
We have a
figure.
set of steps here that go up from the terrace area up to the parking.
Okay.
And
So-
then from there, you could go across on the sidewalk to walk this sidewalk to get to this apartment over here. Yes, it's a long walk. Unfortunately, life deals us with some side yards, curveballs every once in a while.
Well, like I said, it's not us that could potentially suffer. It's your client's tenants. And so we're just trying to figure out, does this make sense? And, are there other tools that we could, would it make sense to occasionally have, a parking spot designated as a pickup drop-off area or, and most importantly, I think, is there enough handicap? Now, you get credit for your handicap spots. Is there enough handicap? Because I think that
We have more than enough handicap. In fact, that's one of the things.
probably need, whatever the normal ratio is, apartments, I would think we need a little bit more handicap spots than
We have
typical.
We have, I'm trying to remember, 2, 4, 6,
7.
8, 12, 14, 16 handicap spaces for this
Okay.
apartment, which, correct me if I'm wrong, Pat, but we only need about 9.
Well, the other thing to keep in mind is, because of some infeasibility, not all these buildings are accessible to the handicap.
Right, and
because
right.
of the slope. So, all these units are, well, first of all, it'd be only the basement units or the ground floor units would be accessible.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
In fact,
But
these.
many
these
of the
units
buildings
here-
have gone not accessible at all, because we had to have steps up.
Well, and the requirement is, a certain percentage of your buildings have to
Still
be
have
at
20%
88, right.
be accessible.
Well, no, so I just want to make sure we're good there. I'm just thinking about the parking. I wonder if you had, I'm trying to think of an and you may not have the depth in there to do it. I'm thinking that if you had a husband and wife, one parked in the garage, would it be appropriate if the other one parked in tandem right behind the garage? And is there enough depth to do that? You're saying there's not enough depth to do that? Okay.
There's not a
My
20-foot depth.
my question is, remind us now how many one-bedroom, two-bedroom, three-bedrooms you have.
Oh, put you on the spot.
You have that on one of your plans, Mark?
Actually, you have.
It might be. Seems like I saw that I saw that somewhere. Yeah, it's not in that one. Not on the elevations. I think I saw it on a site plan. You know what? I think it's in here.
I apologize, I should have that ready, but
But what I was wondering is, if you have so many one-bedrooms, then realistically, you only need one parking
if
spot.
you think about it per bedroom. I have I did a project in Knoxville, downtown, in the waterfront area, and they dropped the parking ratio down to less than 1.4 per unit. I thought that was,
Well, they might. Maybe college students. You might have college students without cars. I guess I like where Rita's going with this. The problem is our ordinance does say one thing, and so we've still got to figure out how to address this. Is that if you have an abundance of one-bedroom units, then the odds of you needing 2 parking spaces all the time, you might have a guest come over, but generally speaking, you're gonna have 1 car there.
Yep.
And so it'd be kind of nice to know what those ratios are.
I thought we had that on one of the plans. I don't remember actually.
I apologize. I can tell you that we
We're seeing
have
it, but
a
maybe did.
relatively few number of 3 bedrooms. I have, I think 18 3-bedrooms, which is right at a 10-11% ratio, I think. And I think we're close to 50-50 with 1 bedroom and 2 bedrooms.
I think for me, I would think 3 bedrooms would be family units. 2 bedrooms might be roommates, thus you'd have 2 cars. And then 1 bedrooms would odds are being 1 car, and unless you're having a Super Bowl party, you might have a whole bunch of people come over and people
Well, and
just
if
deal
you
with it.
have guests, they can park in those
Overflow.
places, overflow, right. I've seen
And
places,
20 years ago, the thought process was 2 spaces per. And it has, like what was talked about, it has been coming down, since the last 5 years, I think. The younger generation now, it's changed. Part of it is for the same reason you have the bike racks included in your requirements. I mean, you get a lot more of that.
Yes, which we do have a proper number of bicycle spaces. I mean, Mark, correct me, we're 41 feet spaces off, correct, from the parking ratio?
Out of a total of what? How many total parking spaces do you have for the apartments? I mean, let's put this in perspective.
The number that I'm thinking is 335. That's what we have shown.
For the whole development.
That's shown on the plan right now is 335 parking spaces.
So a little over 10% deficit.
It's not that high, I don't believe, Mark.
Is it not that
I
much?
bet that's for the whole thing, like Pat said. That sounds pretty high for.
Well, I mean, how many total? Hold on, I've got it, guys. How many units?
556 units.
How many total units do you have? Let me do the math.
228.
Well, 228 times 1.75, right? Okay, let's do the math here. So you're required to have 399, and we think you're 41 short, so you're 358,
Okay.
which is,
Okay.
Okay.
358.
so you're about 10%. Little, I mean, if the total requirement's 399,
10.5% roughly speaking.
right. Well, like I said, it's your tenants. I mean, it's your tenants that, you know, may be unhappy with it. I'm starting to drink the Kool-Aid with the overflow parking down there by the gas station. I mean, it is possible. I mean, even though you may not want to climb up that hill, it is possible to do that. You just need to think long and hard to make sure you're comfortable with that. Again, there's going to be peak times. You know, Super Bowl Sunday, I guess. So, you know, everybody's going to run out of parking. It just is what it is.
Yes, I
So-
agree. Well, Super Bowl Sunday, there's not going to be a lot of people at the grocery store.
Well,
Unless it's like,
That's true.
unless they can run there real quickly during a commercial and get more beer.
Right.
But, I mean,
Probably more importantly, the developer is comfortable, I think,
yes.
with it. And
Well, it's ultimately their business, their
Yes.
product, and if they've
Yes.
got unhappy tenants, you know, that's going to affect their bottom line.
Right, and this plan, the concept plan that's right there is what they've been using to do their market studies from. And the market study is what the financial people follow, blah, blah, blah. Correct me if I'm wrong on this. He has a lot more experience with multifamily than I do, so, but I know that this plan has been what they're driving all along. Once we got the concept plan for the rezoning approved, this is what we're trying to follow. And I think we are doing that pretty good, other than finding out, having
from
any,
the concept, we're about 6 spaces short from what in this area from what the concept was.
right, because we had to add a maintenance building that the developer wanted so he can maintain his facility in a very productive way.
I think for me to get comfortable with this particular item, those other 41 spots, the 358 to 399, are going to have to be constructed as part of this project. Now, the good news is you're saying, hey, you're going full speed ahead with
Yes.
your grocery store. The problem is if something happened and you change your mind with the grocery store, you're going to be out of the overflow parking will not exist based upon the site plan that we have before us tonight
I
that you're asking
understand
for
what you're
approval on. And so I think
We'll show the additional 41 spaces.
If that doesn't happen.
If it doesn't happen, we will more
well,
than
no,
happy.
I'm saying if you're asking for approval tonight.
Right, no, approval
And-
subject to, and
Yeah,
I'll say
subject
right
to. So
now,
I'm saying the only way we're going to be able to do it, because otherwise we'd be giving you
We'll
approval
show-
for something that would, in day one, and be in violation.
no, we'll show the 41 additional spaces. And I'll show them in the areas that I pointed out, near the gas station and adjacent going up towards the grocery store. And I'll get the 41 spaces in there. I'll add the 41 spaces in.
Okay.
Just need to demonstrate that they meet the shared parking if y'all are okay with it
Does the
being
grocery
shared.
store have to be that
Because there are
big?
certain requirements in the parking and loading
Talk
that
to the grocery store people.
address that.
That's
They're the
smaller
ones-
than they wanted. They originally wanted 70,000 square feet.
Yeah. Most grocery stores today are going 70 to almost 120,000 square feet.
So they could be,
Well,
Sell
think
clothes
about it,
and
the
jewelry
Ingalls
and-
Market that's just down the street.
Grills and patio
I did the
furniture.
site design for that, if y'all remember. And that store, if my memory serves me correctly, is almost 90,000 square feet.
which one?
The Ingalls that was just remodeled, within the last, what, 10 years, 12 years? Yeah.
Anyway, let's stay on a topic. We're going to be here all
We'll
night.
show the additional 41 spaces.
Is there a consensus from the planning commission that we can get comfortable with number one, with showing the additional 41 space? I'm talking about subject to number one. And that way, if there is, we can move on. Otherwise, we can talk about it.
We're talking about subject to the fact that
We'll-
if for some strange reason the grocery store and the retail doesn't make it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, no, we'll show it
Well, he's gonna
on
go
the
and show it.
plans now.
Oh, okay.
We'll add the 41 spaces in.
He'll revise this site plan.
Okay.
And there'll
And that'll
be-
be a subject to of this approval.
Yes.
And we still got to work through items 2, 3, and 4, which I can't remember exactly what they said, but we'll deal with that in a second.
Well,
Do you not have to take out some of the green spaces?
No,
No,
no.
he's just going to show part of that
I'm
parking
just
lot
gonna
that's over
add-
there by the gas station.
I'm going to add additional parking that would normally be built as part of the grocery store to get the 41 spaces. And I'll put it as close, get the 41 closest spaces to the lot line.
Is everybody comfortable with that?
Mark, will you agree with that?
Oh, yeah, I mean, if that's what they want to do, yeah. I don't support it, but, because I don't think it's convenient or makes any sense, but
I was about
mean-
to say, do you have a better alternative?
it's your all's call. You got my opinion.
Well, I think it's an imperfect fixed, but it is what it is. And again, it's your customer and your tenants.
Yes.
I suppose, as Ed just mentioned, eliminating a building is not an option.
No.
No, that's the only other alternative.
Yeah,
Or
and-
go to
and-
some kind of parking.
Well, if you eliminate a building, we just lost the whole project.
Yeah, that's-
Well, yeah, but you'd have to cut out 20 plus units.
20, the smallest building is 24 units.
Yeah, so you know, at the 1.75.
Yeah.
So like I said, I'm okay with it. You know, someday you may have a tenant cussing you and you get to deal with that. And we're
Well,
going to tell
my
them, hey, we
developer
told
gets
them,
to deal with it.
we told them that, you know, but, right,
My developer does, not me.
right, not you.
At least if I get a phone call about that.
Sure,
he'll
you
get
meet the
second one.
shared parking requirements and demonstrate that on the plans, because that's in the ordinance, if you're
Well,
going
there
to
is
share.
some legal documentation that
Yeah.
that you'll have to deal with, which is not a big deal, but it's, you know,
Well,
it is
Mark-
nonetheless, you've got to deal with that.
Let me ask this question. Isn't it already taken care of by the plat?
Well, I mean, there's other things that specifically address shared parking. It's in addition to that, you know, like
Because I remember
the
a long
pedestrian
conversation we
path-
had about shared
pedestrian
parking on
pathway.
the plat. Did they not take care of that with the plat?
Well, that's just one aspect of it. I mean, you have to show how the pedestrian is going to get from one to the other. If you're saying that part of the parking's not within the multifamily area, and what's the pedestrian way? You know, it's got to
Oh,
be
we'll have to
within
have the sidewalk,
500
the
feet.
adjacent
and
sidewalks and everything.
That's the
I told
stuff
you.
that's in there.
Yeah, no, we'll show the sidewalks associated with the parking. That's not a problem.
Yeah, you'll have to. Yeah, I mean, it'll have to be reflected on the plat too, obviously, because that would be an easement that would.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are we ready to move to item number 2? I'm
yes.
sorry, Rita.
Yes, that's where I was going.
I'm trying to keep us moving along.
Okay, your problem with number 2.
Considering that we've been in front of staff developer for the last 3 months since the last time we were here, and I thought we had solved this problem at the last staff developer meeting, and it's rearing up again. I mean, yeah, the concept plan showed a detention pond that was 4 foot deep. And if you remember correctly, when we did the concept plan, I hadn't done any drainage calculations at all. And now we have a pond shown on the grading plan that's approximately 1,900 square feet bigger than what's on the concept plan. But it is 8 foot deep, not 4 foot deep. But and the only thing that's going in that pond is the apartments.
So I'm going to pick on this plan that's right in front of us. This master plan shows this real pretty, flat, grassy area that we thought, I think I brought up, it'd be kind of cool if somebody wanted to, you know, set up a tent, or they could have a little, you know, some sort of little, I don't know, music festival, small out there in this big green area. And all of a sudden, I think what we're seeing is if you got an 8 foot deep pond, it's a little more intimidating to go, you know, have it as a recreational open space area.
And I agree with you, it is.
you have any other ideas about
The
how
only other
to?
option we have is to put it all underground, and that's cost prohibitive. That just knocks the deal out the window. Let's put it this way, I'm putting the entire grocery store and all the commercial underground.
What about what? I see some structure. Is that the kind of
That's a
pavilion
That's a
structure?
pavilion structure,
Or a
yes.
gazebo or
Yes.
something?
Yes.
I think I saw some
It's on-
elevations in
it's-
here.
It's on the streetscape, right there,
You calling it a shelter?
the shelter,
Oh,
yeah.
shelter elevation.
Yes.
So now, is that shelter down in the bottom of the pond?
No.
Okay, then.
That's a lawn area up at that portion.
Okay, why don't you show us, let's see if we can get a little, I'm looking at this one, which is not indicative of what you're proposing, so let's look at what you are proposing. Yeah.
Wouldn't it be like a,
You're talking about this one here.
Delay in this.
I mean,
Yeah, let's stick it up there. And
dangerous still, not without this.
A version of the open space in those small sheets. That was
Yeah, it's-
what was
yeah.
approved on the concept plan.
We did do a blow-up of just the grading plan of that area.
draw the contours of the detention.
You gotta be kidding.
I can't, to me, I'm not seeing it, I'm just seeing the pond. I mean, where's your flat area?
level there.
Right, this whole area here is flat. Right.
There's an upper level.
Right here.
Okay, so it's like a terraced level up there.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
It's a little bit darker for that.
okay.
Sloped area.
And we're gonna, at the bottom, we're gonna put some water, keep some water in it.
So you're actually going to be a retention pond now instead of a detention pond?
No, it is a detention
This is
pond.
your
It's called
mosquito
a wet
breeding. This is a
detention.
mosquito breeding.
Wasn't that a
area.
retention?
No, it's completely different. It's still a detention because you're detaining the water that comes in.
Right, but you are retaining year round.
The wet part of it will be wet.
Okay.
Anything below that will stay wet.
The volume
Okay.
still has to
To
be
be,
there for the.
Right,
the-
okay.
Everything above it is the
Is it
detention.
gonna be aerated, or is it gonna be a mosquito breeding area?
No, we got a fountain.
We're proposing a fountain aerator.
In
Okay.
it, yes. Yeah, we're proposing a fountain in it, and around the perimeter of it, as you can tell on the one that's on the screen there, there's some vegetation. There's a shallow area for about 6 feet that we can plant with wetland vegetation, which will also help aerate the water and encourage migration of birds and stuff to come in.
Well, no, I like having the fountain and all that. Let me. What do you think your dimensions of the grassy area are? Are we talking 50 by 50 or?
No, it's more like, no, we did this at the staff developer. It's like it's about 100-foot wide by 60-foot deep, Mark? Am I remembering things correctly?
No, it's.
I don't
This is
remember.
about 100, between the walking trail, about 100 by about 80. And that's
Yeah.
only-
Relatively flat?
Yeah, it's a,
Yes.
Okay, that's a pretty decent
It's a
decent
one-
area.
Top of the top of this area here is the top of the dike, so it does grade out on the back side of it.
You're saying, but the area that you're talking about, that's roughly 100 by 80, is
That's
relatively
relatively
flat.
flat.
You want to go kick a soccer ball, it's not going to roll into the pond.
It's a little slope.
Unless you kick it in
so
the pond.
Shed water a little bit.
Okay.
it's a 1 in 20 slope. It's a five-
Well, it'll look flat if it's 1 in 20.
Yes.
Mark, I guess what your concern and staff's concern was that the open space is not as usable as what was on the original concept plan? It's not, okay.
I mean, that's a real key component of
Well, that's the idea. We want, people that live in apartments, we want to provide them some open space.
There's a
something that's
grading plan.
above and beyond.
Grading plan.
Okay, yeah, it's pretty flat.
And we did a comparison at the staff developer meeting, and I'm going to get behind the microphone so people can hear me. We did a comparison at the staff developer meeting. The concept plan I had in AutoCAD, so I did a area at the top of the concept plan. It was, I don't remember exactly the number, but then I did the area of the top of the berm for the pond that we're proposing, and it's approximately 4 foot out from where we had it on the concept plan. In fact, when you overlay it, it's almost 4 foot out from the concept plan. Now, also in the concept plan, you look at the concept plan, flip this up. You look at the concept plan, the pond was down close to the southern property line.
Well, it was kind of at the bottom of those stairs, weren't they? Those little steps?
Still have an upper tier, but you have this
Yeah,
step
we still
down.
have upper tier up here, but what the planner didn't take into consideration, there's an existing sanitary sewer line that runs through here. We
Okay.
cannot have the storm pond on that,
Oh,
or
yeah.
any part of the easement of it.
Right.
And that is why this is now pulled up some.
And that affected your upper terrace?
The upper
That's
terrace.
because of the sanitary sewer?
Yes. An existing sanitary sewer system, which I've been working with First Utility, and when we go to the next phase, it's still going to be there when we're done. We can't touch, we're going to have to relocate some of it that goes by the grocery store, take that out of service and build a new line that comes down Kingston Pike and that comes around between us and Little Joe's, and per First Utility's requirements, not mine. But
Is that the main line that goes all the way to East Lee Junction? You
Yep.
got to relocate that?
no, just that one portion of it right there. This goes down, yeah, it goes down towards Dixie Lee Junction. We're relocating a portion of that port to run parallel to Kingston Pike and then come down between Little Joe's. We're having to relocate a portion that went underneath the proposed shops anyways, so this way now we won't have a sanitary sewer easement anywhere near the grocery store. And it'll be at a depth that First Utility's not going to scream at us about, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that's all going to be part of the grocery store plans, grocery store and commercial area. But yeah, there's site things that the planner didn't know, and I knew, and I couldn't get him to take it into consideration when he was drawing the concept. So that's another reason why things got pushed and pulled and tugged.
Okay, so this one was number 2. Is everybody satisfied with what they've heard?
I am. I don't know about
Well, I think the applicant's going to need some direction. Do we feel like there's sufficient open space for the PCD?
Well, you also got to remember.
As proposed, or is there not? Because I mean,
Yes,
We've got to talk
well-
about number 3 as well. That's it.
it's another
that-
part
that-
of
that
the
takes
western.
in-
Oh, well, it's open space also.
Yes. We're over the open space, the total area we're dedicating for open space is over the minimums required.
Yeah, but it has to be usable open space. I mean, it's not, a lot of it's just area that's not usable, really. And
I mean,
that's
I think the flat area by the gazebo, if it's,
Well,
you said it was
Mark,
60 by 100, 60 by, or 80 by 100, I
That
think
would be
that's,
usable.
I think
yes.
that's usable.
Yeah.
That would be, yes.
And
Yes.
they've got the
Yes.
walking
And-
trail.
But
and
there's
the-
a lot of area around the periphery that they're counting as
Got that
open
aerated.
space. It's really
Okay.
not.
It's aerated.
Well, originally we had it as a dry pond, and that staff developer, Louise, who's not here tonight, suggested, well, what if we made it a water feature?
That's,
And we said,
That's why I'm
fine,
comfortable with it.
we'll make it a wet
Yeah.
pond and
Well,
put a water feature out of it.
I think that's making it more palatable for us working through this.
We have no
is
problem
that,
doing that.
You know, you've got the trail going around it. It's kind of, push the stroller around the pond.
Mm-hmm.
Seems kind of, neat. And so I think we're warming up to it. I think there's the western open space on item number 3. Is that the one where that's the terrace?
Yeah, that would be the terrace.
And in regards to what we submitted last time and this time, we actually have more usable space now that I've changed the ramp system for getting down into it.
So now you can get a wheelchair all the way down into that
Yes.
terrace flat area. I like that area because I think it's kind of an intimate area that's kind of private and
Yes.
um,
And it will be, I mean, to be truthfully honest, it's going to be used more by the residents of the apartment complex than the grocery store, because unless you knew it was there, you're not going to go up there and look for
well,
it.
and quite frankly, somebody that goes to the grocery store is not going to go, play in the open space. I mean, they're going to go to the grocery store, get the groceries, and go home.
Yes.
But I think when we talk about open space in PCD, especially with multifamily, it's for the residents.
Yes.
We're trying. People live in apartments.
Yes.
They don't have a backyard.
Yes.
And so, do they have alternatives for a backyard? And so that's what this
Well,
is.
then,
This is really about.
Along that lines,
and you add a few events to it.
yeah, yeah.
Do apartments don't do any kind of playgrounds anymore? That's just not popular.
Well, depends on what your target is.
Demographic is, yeah.
With fewer 3 bedrooms, the family market is not the main.
I mean, I like the pavilions. I don't. We want you to.
Well,
Yep.
and Noah, along that usable open space concept, one of the things that the last meeting that you were not at, and I did my fast 20-minute speech, and we went through about 4 different items. Remember, one of them was, do we put retaining walls between the buildings or do we not? And I kind of got the consensus, and we kept the retaining walls in because it does create a 30-foot green space between every apartment too.
Then it's more flat.
That's just.
Right.
Right. It makes it more of a flat, usable area.
Well, I assume you
that
are
was not gonna
pet
be-
friendly. I mean, the apartments allow some people, you got to pay an extra deposit or whatever,
Yes.
and so people got to take their dogs out.
Yes. Yes.
I think
Okay.
number 3 was just talking about incorporating that on all the plan sheets, because
Okay.
it wasn't on a lot of your site plan sheets. That's all that was talking
Okay.
about. Since that really is an amenity, like we said, primarily for the apartments.
Apartments, I agree.
People, it needs to be part of
I
it.
understand what you're saying, Mark, and we'll deal.
That's
we'll-
what that
We'll
was
make sure
about.
that we deal with
Yep.
staff and get that taken care of.
And then, so we've got 2 and 3, 4,
4.
50-foot transition area from different transitions, element options.
And this gets back to kind of what we talked about the last meeting, where I was saying I want to grade some areas, and you said, talk to staff. Well, I did have a meeting with staff, and after that meeting, and the developer was at that meeting, he just said, we're sticking with our original plan, we're going to keep going forward. Now, and I understand staff's concerns. The face of the retaining wall, for the most part, is about 80 foot from the property line. And yes, there are tiebacks shown for the retaining wall that go back approximately 30 feet. So yes, we are getting real close, if not encroaching into the 50-foot transition zone. Had we been able to grade it, we would cut those tiebacks down by half, because I could cut the height of the wall in half. But, because we're not going to, we still want to try and pursue that with staff, but for the sake of just getting an approval today, we just want to keep moving forward with what we've been presenting since day one. We will still work with staff if we can to lower the height of walls, lower the tiebacks of retaining walls. I've had a conversation with the retaining wall designer today, and he told me, because I questioned some of the places where we had tiebacks, and I'm going, the wall's 9 foot tall. Why do we have a 30-foot tieback behind it? He goes, I was rushing to get you something to have in front of Planning Commission. We will now go back and reevaluate on a smaller scale and cut the worst case scenario.
I'm gonna jump in because you're putting a lot of burden on staff with this. Staff doesn't have the jurisdiction to let you grade in a wooded buffer. And I'm gonna go back to the old school term of transition zone.
let's talk-
Let me finish.
Okay.
The town, we have a very long-standing requirement that does not allow you to grade in a wooded buffer. Now, if it's a not wooded buffer, we allow more flexibility in it. But when
And
you've
there's
got a
no
mature
buffers in-
stand of trees in there,
But there's no buffer in the PCD
well,
zone.
now I'm going to call it, okay, we're tomato, transition zone. Now,
The
for years
transition
we've called
zone,
it, we've called it buffers.
And when we were doing the rezoning, I asked that specifically, can we grade a transition zone?
Well,
And we can grade a transition zone.
yes, if it's not wooded.
If you look at the tree preservation plan, there are 7 trees that are on the corner.
Let me just jump in here, because this needs to be clear.
Yeah, I think so, too.
It's very clear in the ordinance of the PCD that, and I've been to this site, it's tree covered. And it says, existing tree covered areas within transition shall be protected. So you
And that's
can't
a-
grade,
and that's
that
the same way-
50-foot area, you cannot
That is the
grade
same
it.
way that we've treated what the old school guys called buffers. Now, we now like to call them transition zones, but they're a buffer. And so, but that's the same way we've treated those buffers. If there's mature vegetation in the buffer, you got to stay out of it.
Right, mature.
Mature.
No, it's tree covered is what it says. in
Well,
the
tree
ordinance.
covered.
And that could be small trees.
Well, I guess so when you're saying,
And that's where Mark and I had a long conversation about this, and I'm not an expert on trees, and I'll be the first one to admit it. And Mark is much more qualified than I am, and I'm not saying he's not right, but tree covered by trees that are this big around?
I've
or
not
trees
walked that
that are-
area. I've looked at it.
That
To me,
is
it looks
tree
like it's
covered,
heavily wooded
yes.
to me. I guess
If
what
you
I'm
look
saying-
at trees and tree cover,
Well, I guess what I'm saying is you want to work with staff and
Yeah,
work
yeah.
through this. Staff doesn't have the ability to say, yeah, you can go up in there and do that.
No,
and I'll
I'm
tell you,
just-
and we've had a long-standing practice of staying out of tree-covered buffers.
And
And,
that's
now
what
we
we're-
can call them transition zones, but
and that's what we're
that's
doing.
what I'm talking. I'm going back 20 years.
I understand.
That
No,
that's how
that's
we've
what we're doing.
treated
That's-
those buffers as kind of holy grails. That, hey, we're going to stay out of them. If they've got
even at that, we have what's in the
natural screen
PCD.
in them, then we stay out of it.
Yeah, and I agree, and that's why we have left it as per the original design, and we have a 32-foot tall retaining wall that's running from the steps around the corner, and we're trying to do it with the type of retaining wall that does have the least amount of disturbance of the land behind it.
Can you not use a gravity wall that doesn't have tiebacks that are
Not-
that deep?
Not 30 feet. Gravity
Okay.
walls only go
Well,
up
I
to
mean-
8 to 12 feet.
Okay.
And we're using Ready Rock wall. So, and
Well, obviously, if you could figure out another wall that doesn't have the tiebacks, I understand the physics of why you got to have the tiebacks.
Yeah.
I guess what I'm saying is that I really don't think that this is a negotiable area.
fine.
I'm going to call it a buffer. We can call it a transition zone, but I'm just telling you, it's just we can't open that Pandora's box for you, and because it'll always
Fine.
come back to haunt us.
I'm not asking you to.
Okay, but that is part of what this number 4 is saying.
But-
so there's no misunderstanding.
No, I understand that, but let me ask you a question, and Mark too. Outside of that 50-foot area, can we start grading?
Well, I mean, if you're outside the 50-foot transition area, you can grade outside that, yeah. So you just need to show on your revised plans the wooded,
So that-
the
see, that would-
tree-covered areas and staying out of
Well,
those.
and Mark, while we're
'Cause-
sitting here talking,
Yeah.
what I'd like to do is show the 50-foot line, and 1 foot outside of that, start grading down so I can lower the height of the retaining walls. And
Obviously, if there's big
Well, I mean-
trees, we'd like for you to stay out of the drip lines. The way the ordinance reads,
there aren't, in that area, there
Yeah.
are no trees.
Okay,
No
I'm saying-
big tree, no
I
big
guess
trees. I'm not gonna
I
say
guess
there's
what
no
I'm saying,
trees.
the way
There's
the
no-
ordinance reads is that you cannot grade in a tree-covered buffer, the 50-foot transition zone.
But
And so,
outside of that, I
but
can't.
yes, if you're outside the 50-foot transition, 1 foot outside of it, you have the ability to grade. To
grade.
Sorry, but Freudian slip there. You have the ability to grade.
Okay.
And so what my thought is, but if you do get into some, obviously if you have the ability, by grading, you're going to kill a tree 20 feet up the hill.
Well, obviously, we won't touch that. We
You know,
won't
if
do
you can
that
try to
in
work
that area.
around it, but
Yes.
technically you can grade outside
Okay.
that transition zone.
Well, that would actually help us lower the height of the retaining wall, because 30 feet, I can lower 10 feet off the wall in a 3-to-1 slope,
Therefore, less tieback.
which would shorten the tiebacks, which,
I'd have to see what they're talking about, but I mean, their retaining wall plans, which this was the first submittal we had those shown, it did show what appeared to be a lot of disturbance well within the 50-foot transition, and that was the
that's
origin
non-negotiable.
of the
well, I understand
comment.
that. I understand that. And we don't want to, we're trying to stay out of the 50 feet. We
But you
will,
can't try. You
No.
have to stay out of the 50 feet.
we'll stay out of the 50 feet.
Okay.
That's not a problem.
Okay.
I mean, it may have to be a little more if, like Noah says, if you're trying to save a certain tree that the drip line, is, so you could end up being a little bit more than 50.
Now, will they need an arborist to determine this?
Well, I think that would be a good idea, and if there's certain trees on that.
I mean, let me
edge
tell you what I'd like to
that,
see. I'd like to see, instead of getting into all that, I'd like to see you're going to have to put up a orange safety fence as part of your grading plan. What I'd really like to see is some coordination with staff to walk along that 50-foot edge of the transition zone with staff and along that orange safety fence and say, all right, is everything reasonable what you're doing in here? If there are some big trees especially, then there needs to be some further consideration for trees that you're going to kill up that slope by grading down below the orange fence.
Okay.
But I think that's a real fair way of saying, hey, you've got, little things are not going to be an issue. You get into a big 100-year-old oak that's 36 inches in diameter,
There's none
and you
in
start
that area.
grading into those drip lines, you're going to kill the tree.
Right, and there's none in the area that we want to grade.
Mark, are you comfortable with that?
Yeah, I mean, we could look at that.
We've
with-
actually,
Coordination with staff. I mean, what needs to occur is that 50-foot line of demarcation needs to be out there. Your
we've
orange
actually
fence.
flagged it already. We flagged the property line.
Okay.
That's staff's request.
Will you
We
flag the
flagged-
property line or
and the 50-foot
Okay, and the
setback.
50-foot. Well, I mean, that's
Yes.
what we need to know is that 50 feet, you know, property lines are important, but the 50 feet is what we're talking about tonight.
That's fine.
Okay.
I'll get Tyler and the surveyor to
Mark
make sure.
that for
Well,
us.
it's
Yeah.
been flagged, because I know Tyler's went and walked it, because he's
Well, they
told me.
didn't tell me that, so I didn't know that.
Well, yeah, because
Yeah.
we don't know. We don't know where
No.
that 50, and we're not going to expect staff to go out there with an open reel tape measure and start pulling 50
Hey,
feet off
I
the.
walked through that area, and I had no idea where the rear property
Well,
line
and it's
was.
probably hard. It's a slope, and this time of year is probably heavily vegetated, a bunch of, you know, all
Yep.
sorts of stuff
So,
coming up,
yes,
so.
we will work and coordinate to make sure that we stay completely out of the 50-foot transition zone where it is tree covered.
Okay, yeah, and that's what the
Now,
ordinance
area that-
requires.
The area that we're showing grading, I've walked that area, it is nothing but a grass field. There's no trees
And that's
on it.
fine.
And
We
that's what we're
we
grading
allow
it.
grading in an area that's not tree covered.
So, that's fine. And number 5, that's an IDOT, so.
But let's don't go through these again. We've
No,
already
no.
checked off 5 through
1, 2, 3,
19.
and 4 is the only ones we need to really look at.
Okay.
Okay, and we're
So-
all, Mark, you're satisfied?
I mean,
He-
that's up to you all.
He's
It's your
reluctantly
decision.
satisfied.
It's your all's decision.
But, so, it's understood that you will work with staff on
Yes,
that,
yes.
the line? Okay.
Yes, I will be more than happy to work with staff to do what we can, legally can, to, one, grade and lower the height of the retaining wall to ensure that we're stay outside of the 50-foot
Well,
demarcation.
lower the retaining wall height is up to you.
Well,
But what number 4 addresses is that we're going to leave number 4. I think the language in there covers everything we've talked about tonight.
Right,
So we're not
that's
going to
not a problem.
modify number 4.
No,
But basically
I'm not
says,
saying
to
that.
be clear, existing tree covered areas within transition shall be protected. And so, and that's just something, and you know, that's something we're going to allow you to stake it or fence it with the orange safety fence, which is going to be required anyway.
Mm-hmm.
You know, prior to you guys getting a land disturbance or a grading permit.
Yep.
And then we can look and say, okay, are there some other trees to deal with? I don't want to spend any more time, but I think we've got the language in there that addresses that. So we're not going to take it out.
no,
I
I'm
mean, it
not
still
asking
needs
you
to be addressed.
No, I have no,
Okay.
I have no problem with number
Okay.
4. I'm just saying, what we're going to do is find that area, what we can grade outside of that. Anything we can do to lower the height of the retaining
Yeah,
walls,
yeah,
lowers
absolutely.
the tieback length, which helps us stay out of the transition zone.
Well, and if you can reduce a 30-foot retaining wall, the more power to you. We'd like to see that. I mean,
Yeah,
retaining walls were always a challenge on this site,
Yes.
and,
Yes.
you know.
And anything we can do to lower that just saves money on the project. So we'll be more than happy to
Okay,
take care of
Mark,
that.
are we scheduled to vote on this tonight? This is public,
Yes, I believe so.
I think we're discussion and public hearing.
It's up to
with the
you all.
subject twos.
Yep.
Okay. Is everybody on the planning commission comfortable with the number of subject twos and the fact that this is more than what we've been seeing lately, but we have it agreed from the developer?
We're probably going to need some consensus just to make sure we're all on board with those items number 1 and 2, because if you leave the subject twos in there as they are presented,
Well,
then
no,
that's
Mark,
going to create
right.
an issue. So we just need to.
No, number 1, we agreed to add 41 spaces.
Okay.
With the associated parking
Okay.
and sidewalks as required to meet the shared parking agreements.
Okay.
Okay.
Easement.
Easement, yes.
Yeah, the shared parking easement.
We'll agree to do that.
Okay.
Okay,
And then
so
the other
we-
obviously was the open space. We want to make sure is the open space appropriate and meet the intent of the PCD.
And I can't answer that, only you can do that.
Well, I'm okay with it.
I'm okay with the open space. I mean, it's less than what we'd originally saw a year or two ago whenever we first started looking at this. But I do understand the constraints. I actually like the pond with water in it now, so I think that kind of mitigates losing some of that open space.
It will be aerated.
Strike that
We'll make sure that's
comment.
aerated.
Is that what you're saying?
Say that again?
Remove that comment. Is that what you're saying?
Is that-
For number 2.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
What about
Three,
number
they'll do
3?
that.
Number 3 is just.
That's a
staff-
housekeeping item.
That's a housekeeping item, isn't
You
it,
should be able to do
Mark?
that.
Now we understand it.
And then number 4, we've spent a lot of time. Let's don't beat
Number-
that horse
num-
again.
no,
That's going to
number
stay
4
in there.
stays- Number 4 stays in.
Yeah.
We agree
So
to
just
that.
removing number 2 and modifying, well, actually, number 1's the same. 'cause
Yeah,
we-
number 1's still
the
going to
same.
stay in there.
Yes, we're going to show it.
All right.
Okay, Noah, do you want to make a motion?
Why not? Move to approve the site plan for Kingston Pike Village Phase 1 Apartments, 115 South Watt Road, subject to items 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, all the way through 31. All of them other than number 2.
All through number 2, except for number 2.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you.
Just remember, it ain't over till it's over.
No, we're not done yet.
Yeah.
You're still gonna have to see this ugly mug a couple more times. I apologize.
Oh, maybe that's why you brought the black color there.
No.
I'll just turn
Magic or
Oh, don't let me forget after you're finished. I'm gonna show you
Oh.
that brick. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, we appreciate it. Thank you, gentlemen, for your time.
Okay, Bart is next. Item number 11, discussion and public hearing on the adoption of the Knox County, City of Knoxville, Town of Farragut Municipal Jurisdictional Local Hazard Migration Plan. Mitigation plan, yeah, migration.
And I opened up that PDF and I said, "Oh, what have I done? This thing is so big." And I went through it page by page, and it scared me to death. I was like, "I'm not even sure. I'm not sure where I want to live. It's all scary."
All right, guys. All right, thanks, guys.
Thank you, sir.
400 something pages.
My pad doesn't do that.
Okay, I'm Bart Hose. I'm the Assistant Community Development Director. I'm here for the Local Hazard Mitigation Plan update. It covers Knox County, the City of Knoxville, and the Town of Farragut, so it's a multi-jurisdictional plan. It's a FEMA-required 5-year update of the 2011 plan. It is a very large document. I hope it was able to come through to you. So
It came through all right.
yeah.
For a long time.
Oh, 400 plus pages.
Bedtime reading.
Yeah.
I was just glad I noticed that before I hit print.
No kidding. Yeah, you'd be out of ink and paper.
We did try to include the executive summary in your packet, and also a resolution for adoption, or I should say approval of the plan that will then also recommend it on to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen for adoption. As I said, it's a FEMA-required 5-year update of the plan. The update process started about a year ago, last June. It was completed with the assistance of a consulting firm, and that firm was AMAC Foster Wheeler. They've been renamed now to Wood AMAC Foster Wheeler. I guess they probably merged with somebody. And the plan was initiated by Knox County, and I think they're the ones that actually paid for the consulting services on this plan update. The planning process, it utilized a planning committee made up of stakeholders from all the jurisdictions. So there were several members of the town staff that served on that committee. It also involved 2 public input sessions, plus a online survey, so there was public input gathered for the plan. From a planning standpoint, we think it provides a lot of good, valuable information with respect to natural hazards that are in the community and that could affect the community, and also the town's vulnerability to those hazards, because there's different vulnerabilities depending on your geographic location and the various hazards. So it does both document the hazards and also address vulnerability. And you can see that in the rankings that, for instance, flood hazard is actually not highly ranked in this town, but in part that's because our flood zones are fairly narrow, and the town's done a really good job over the years of managing the floodplains and not putting a lot of structures in the way, so your vulnerability is not as high. So that is factored into the overall planning methodology that the consultants used. And then probably most importantly is the plan includes various mitigation strategies, projects, and programs that that go to addressing the mitigation goals that were established as part of the plan by the committee. In many cases, some of those strategies are are applicable to all 3 jurisdictions. There are a few that are targeted for specific jurisdictions. FEMA does not require the implementation of this plan. So it's not binding on the town in terms of you have to accomplish all of the mitigation strategies that are in the plan. What it does is it ties grant funding to those mitigation strategies. So if the town or if Knoxville or if Knox County were to apply for a mitigation grant, somehow there has to be a linkage to one of the strategies that's in the plan. And also the plan can be amended even within the 5-year normal update process. So if an issue came up that wasn't thought about during the planning process, if a project to mitigate a particular hazard came up that wasn't initially identified, there is a process that it can be revised to accommodate that. And of course, each local government needs to adopt the plan independently to be eligible for the mitigation grants. So that's really what we're here to do tonight is for the Planning Commission to review it and approve it, for your internal use as a Planning Commission because of some of the good information in it, and then to hopefully recommend it on to the town board for their official adoption. And once they adopt it, we'll submit that information to FEMA, and it'll become effective for the town of Farragut to use for grant purposes.
Very, very thorough plan. Glad we didn't have to pay for it. And the only surprise I had in it was that the April 2011 hailstorm was not mentioned in it that clobbered West Knoxville. They mentioned all the other storms going back 100 years, and I was like, I can't believe they didn't mention the 2011 hailstorm. But anyway, great plan, a lot of good information in it, and
Yeah, that particular consulting firm does these plans all over the country. I think they've probably, according to the website, I think they've done approximately 500 around the country. So, so they're a very well experienced firm at doing these type of plans. They tend to get them through the FEMA review process very quickly, generally on the first time. And FEMA has some very specific, I guess, touchstones in terms of what they want to see in one of these plans. So the general format and the materials covered are largely what's required to get it through FEMA approval. So,
Kind of a spot on.
yeah,
spot on.
there are certain elements that have to be in the plan, like the profiling of the hazards have to be in the plan, the vulnerability analysis has to be in plan. The section on plan maintenance going forward and how it's going to be dealt with in terms of an ongoing committee process. Those things all have to be addressed in the plan.
Is this a step up or 3 steps up or something from what they've had in the past?
I think FEMA standards are constantly evolving in terms of what they require. So I can't say what they required 10 years ago, but it is a very thorough plan. I think it provides a lot of good background information on the community in terms of just the geographic setting, some demographic information is there, some basic information on the economy, and then a really thorough evaluation of the various hazards that are in terms of natural hazards. And I guess that is one point on these plans. They're specifically targeted towards natural hazards, so they don't deal with things like hazardous material spills and that sort of thing, which of course Farragut knows that you had the train derailment a number of years ago. So you are subject to man-made hazards as well, but this plan really targets the natural hazard element.
That brings up 2 questions. One, I was going to ask, is there a plan similar to this for man-made hazards, or?
There's not that I know of. I know that the Knoxville Emergency Management Office does look at those type of things. I don't know if they have a specific plan in place that deals with those type of hazards. I know they have a local government planning committee that looks at where the hazardous material sites are and some of the transportation routes, and so there's a body that meets regularly to look at those type of things, but whether or not they have a plan like this in place, I don't know.
It ties back to emergency management, and they look at, areas of vulnerability like that, but then I don't think they go into as much in specific site as opposed to looking where maybe concentrations of industry are, types of chemicals, or proximity to Oak Ridge, or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
But it gets back to the emergency management type.
They have to
consider it.
provide that stuff to fire departments.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you told me when we were talking about this that if Farragut passes it, but Knoxville or Knox County, for whatever reason, may not, it doesn't affect Farragut.
Yeah, that is correct. The way FEMA does these is the plan is put together and sent to FEMA. They review it and they approve it pending local adoption. So, and then I believe it's at least one of the local governments has to adopt it within, I think it's 6 months. I may be wrong on that, for it to become a valid plan. But if say 2 out of the 3 local governments adopt it and the third doesn't, it does not impact the ability of the 2 that did adopt it to get grants. So, so it's not in an all in or no one's in type of situation. And also, if you'll notice in the plan that the Knox County School District also added themselves to the plan. So they're going to potentially adopt it on their own right, and then they would be able to apply for mitigation grants as a governmental entity in and of themselves.
Looks good to me.
Move for approval, recommend it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Did you second that, Rita?
No, Betty.
Okay.
Oh, was that really?
And that was approval of the attached resolution?
Right.
Okay.
I've got one thing I need. I've got one additional, just for y'all to review real quick. I had a question from the architect that's doing the Little Turkey Creek Commons that came before y'all last month. You know, where they're required to do the 75% masonry, and they had a couple of products they wanted to see what you thought about. It's kind of somewhat related to the new warehouse thing. This here is what's called a quick brick product. That's what they're like to do. And this is more of a traditional brick module. And if you're standing looking at the building from the outside, this is what you can see. If you look at it cross section, it's almost like a half of a CMU. But CMU wouldn't be allowed per se, but if it's because of its width, it's more in scale with the traditional brick module.
Turn that one around so I can see the other side.
Again, that's the view you would see. It would still be mortared in place.
I want to see the holes.
It's basically just
Yeah,
sits
okay.
like a cinder block
Oh, okay.
cross section. This is more of a traditional brick.
That what we would be seeing would be the top of it?
You'd be seeing the side,
The
side.
face.
Okay.
just like that. So this is real brick. This is the quick brick.
It's still laid like brick.
It's still laid,
It's-
it's still mortared in place. It's just a little bit maybe smoother. Apparently, this is a little cheaper to do, I guess.
Well, that actually is a structural product.
Yeah.
You could actually load a roof system on that type of brick versus
you mean?
the red one. You could actually use as a structural product and load a roof. The tan one you could not. That's just purely a veneer.
It's kind of, yeah, it's kind of like a combination, structural element plus veneer.
I'm fine with as long as it's laid in a running bond pattern, a brick pattern, and mortared in. I mean, I think it's a good product, really.
Brick, obviously,
Yeah.
if they were doing a traditional CMU block, that would clearly fine. But I just wanted to make sure that was acceptable with you all.
And are they, that one is kind of shaded, are they all that shaded in some way? Which gives-
Colored?
Uh-huh.
Well, there's a variety of different colors. It is colored throughout the block. That's one advantage to it.
The shading actually, when it's up on a big area, you actually want the shading.
That's what I was gonna say.
Yeah, because
I
if it's
like- I like the shading.
me too.
There's some different
Concrete, that's fired clay.
Yeah.
There's lots of different colors. I think that's what they're.
I like the fact that it's shaded. I think that's a feature.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's kind of what they described.
They
See-
did.
But seeing it in person.
Yeah, so we just wanted to make sure that was okay.
Okay, in that case, the, what's today? July 19th, 2018 Farragut Municipal Planning Commission is adjourned.